Welcome everyone to the 2021 Intelligent Money British GT Championship. After a thrilling 2020 campaign, British GT is back for another season. 9 races at 6 different circuits, all of them guaranteed to keep us on the edge of our seats. With a whole host of returning drivers, many of them former champions, and more than a dozen drivers making their British GT debuts, this year's championship is wide open. Reigning GT3 champion Sandy Mitchell is back with Barwell Motorsport and is aiming to become only the second ever driver to claim back-to-back British GT titles.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Last year was a great year with Rob and Barwell, and really enjoyed it. And yeah, like you say, we're back again to give it another go and try and defend the title. Yeah, returning with Adam Ballon, and the championship's got a little bit of a new look to it this year with predominantly Pro-Am, which I think is fantastic and is proving to be really close from the 3 practices so far. And hopefully that continues throughout the season. And me and Adam have gotten really well so far, and the pre-season tests have gone superb. So yeah, hopefully we'll hit the ground running this weekend.
The only other driver to have successfully defended a British GT Championship is Aston Martin factory driver Johnny Adam.
I think it's the Pro-Am element of this championship. I really like working with our customers at Aston Martin Racing to get the best from them, get the best from the package, and try and put together a championship assault. And I've been in it long enough now. I think this is my 10th season in British GT, so you learn as you go along. And it's all about consistency, that's what wins championships. And I've had some great teammates. I think I've had 4 or 5 different teammates over the 10-year period, and we've all had some success along the way. Last time we were actually here, I think we qualified on pole and had a good result in 2015. So yeah, it's nice. It doesn't feel like I've been away from the team, to be fair. We've kind of got a working relationship back again, and we're sort of delving into the detail now and trying to make the whole package as fast as possible, because everyone looks fast this year. So hopefully we can do something this year. Definitely Andrew's speed is still there, and if we could do something this year, it'll be extra special.
In GT4, it's all change, with no fewer than 12 drivers making their first British GT starts this weekend. Jordan Collard, however, is not one of them. He was GT4 runner-up in 2020 and is more determined than ever to claim the title this year.
I somehow have become a GT4 veteran now. I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years. But I remember back in 2019, sort of all the pre-COVID stuff, it was a massive grid then. And I like a big competitive grid, lots of different drivers, lots of different cars, makes it nice and keeps me on my toes.
Katie Milner is one of 4 McLaren development drivers racing with us this year. 12 months later than planned, she's finally about to make her British GT debut.
We all kind of agreed it was the right thing to do with the season being compressed, and with it being a development programme, we didn't have the time in between the races to really train. So, it's given us all an extra year of preparation. I think we'd definitely like a few podiums. I mean, the ideal thing would be to go and win the championship, but a few podiums through the year, maybe even a win would be nice. We just want to be consistent and keep learning through the year.
Century Motorsport endured a difficult 2020 campaign, but Andrew Gordon-Colebrook was able to give the team something to smile about when he won the season finale at Silverstone. He's back again this year, this time with a new teammate and the new Evo version of the BMW M4.
Confidence is very high. I think it was a real breakthrough moment for me to take that victory at Silverstone, home race as well. I've grown up sort of in the shadow of that circuit, so it was good. It was especially good to get it there. Obviously, this being my 3rd year and that being my first win, it was really good to sort of come into this year off the back of such a strong performance. Really, it just showed that we can do it as a team. The car is capable still after having won the championship in 2018, and yeah, we just hope to progress and push on from there for this year.
Welcome to a wet, windy and wild Brands Hatch for the opening round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. David Addison and Andy McEwan trackside. The rain is falling, the wind would blow a dog off a chain. These are not May conditions. They are not what the teams wanted either, because after largely a day of dry running yesterday, and in a lot of cases virtually only, oddly, dry testing, a wet road is going to be a real shock to the system. Start time is about 10 minutes away. This rain might blow through, or Andy McEwan, it might get even wetter and more treacherous, which is not what we need to start the championship.
No, absolutely, although it will make this an even more unpredictable 2 hours of racing than we were already anticipating. It was a conversation that I was having with a lot of drivers actually after the warm-up session, and they were all sort of saying, look, we don't mind if it rains. What we don't really want is wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, dry, because they don't want to be diving into the pit lane every few minutes to change tyres. They don't really want to be stuck out there on the wrong tyres for too long either. So it's going to be a guessing game as much as anything because of this wind. It is so windy here today that the rain keeps blowing through and then it reappears again just as quickly as it's gone.
You've just seen Lorna Vickers, who is the safety car driver. We're going to need the safety car, of course, for the start, because fingers crossed it will be the conventional rolling start. It might have to be a safety car start if conditions get really nasty, but it may well be that that safety car is, of course, used during the course of the race. Brands is one of those old school circuits. The drivers love it, but it is also, of course, a circuit where if you get it wrong, it can bite. Now, the pit lane is open. The race has been declared wet. In other words, the choice for deciding tyres is going to be done by the teams, not by the race director. But nobody wants to commit. Nobody wants to put a set of boots on and go to the grid because they want to see what their big rival team is going to do first.
Exactly, and because you don't want to be stuck on the wrong tyres now at the start. If you put some wet Pirellis on now for the first stint of the race, there is one mandatory pit stop, remember, for all cars, but that doesn't come until around halfway through the race. So if you start on wets and then 10 minutes later it starts drying, you have a choice to make. Do we pit for slicks, or do we stay out there on old, worn, overheating wet tyres for the full duration of the stint? So they're leaving this as long as they possibly can here, David, to make the choice, but they've only got so long before the pit lane closes, and after that point, you're not then allowed to take your grid position.
And whatever you choose, ideally you want to run for the first, if you're on a GT4 entry, 58 minutes. If you're a GT3 car, 62 minutes. The point of that is you do not want to have to make an extra pit stop to change tyres. So unless you change on the grid, whatever you go for now, you want to try and keep until your pit stop. The window, it's not really a window as such, but the minimum starting driver time in GT3 is 62 minutes. The minimum starting driver time in GT4 is 58, and in both cases there's a maximum of 70, so you can work out that that is effectively when that window is going to be there, but it's a minimum drive time rather than a notified window. And it does look as though slicks are the way to go. The wind is blowing the rain away, and it won't take that long for the tyres to get up to temperature and start to work through the slippery nature of the circuit. Now, let's have a thought about tyres. Phil Keane, expert, and he is with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, he is. I'm standing right next to Phil Keane here, and the rain is still coming down. It's not particularly hard, but Phil, the start of a brand new season, we wanted a dry race, didn't we, really?
Well, it makes it a bit more exciting, doesn't it, I suppose? No, I mean, I think it'll be dry for the race, to be honest, or the start. I know it's raining at the moment, but there's not enough rain at the moment to start on wets, I don't think, so we'll see.
So the strategy for you guys would be stay on slicks and see what happens? Yeah,
I think so. I think we'll start there. I don't think there's no standing water or anything yet, so I don't think there's any need to worry at the moment. I don't think the rain's due for 20 minutes, really, so we'll see.
I mean, it is fairly blowy, like you say. It's not particularly raining hard, but it is here. Yeah. For you now, you've changed teams, the same sort of car though, so your ambition for this year presumably is to get onto that top step at the end. Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, same as every year, starting with a new team and obviously a new co-driver, but really enjoying working with WPI. They're doing a great job, and Michael's, progressing really well, so we're hoping just to keep improving throughout the year and, hopefully get onto the top step by the end. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Phil, thank you very much. That's right. Cheers, thank you.
I would take issue slightly with Phil Keane about staying out until the pit stop. It's staying on the track, isn't it, as much as anything, because it is going to be very treacherous indeed. And, of course, he's just said rain isn't due for 20 minutes. Who's the starting driver? It's the AM. It's the less experienced driver. That's a really big ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And of all the circuits to do it at, if this was Silverstone, where if you make a mistake, you're going to get caught by a big friendly tarmac runoff area, then you might have a bit more confidence. But around here, the slightest mistake, regardless of the conditions, is going to cost you, because there are gravel traps, there are tyre walls, there are Armco barriers, all of which will do a lot of damage to a GT3 or GT4 racing car. They are the clouds that are sort of coming towards us there. You can see on board here with the Beechdean AMR Aston Martin, Andrew Howard at the wheel now, the car he shares with Johnny Adam. These two back together, we think, for a full season this year, and they've stuck it straight on pole position. And David, these weather conditions now, I think, will play into their hands, because we've seen in the past, haven't we, that wet conditions don't necessarily favour the mid-engine McLarens and Lamborghinis. The Aston Martin already has the track position, and now has the track conditions maybe to play into their hands as well.
I would go along with that, and I would offer you the Mercedes as another one with all of that torque, that sort of grunt and go front engine cars. BMW would be another one where we'd have had a GT3 one in that mix. But yeah, the McLarens, the Lamborghinis, maybe not now in their favour. You've heard from Phil Keane, that's the car that he shares. Michael Igoe, who won at Donington last year with Andrea Caldarelli, he's done a lot of miles in a short space of time, but really did come on a pace last year. Leo Michitsky back in the championship, and his co-driver there in the grey jacket. Great to have him back for a whole season of British GT. Dennis Lind, he's won the European Lamborghini Super Trofeo Championship. He's won the World Final. He's won the what was then Blancpain GT Series Asia. Really accomplished driver is the Great Dane.
Yeah, quick driver, and has really made a lot of fans over here in the UK. Very, very exciting driver to watch. So too is Sam Neary, who shares the number 8 Team ABBA Racing Mercedes with his father Richard Bryn.
Yes, absolutely right. Richard, you had a bit of an incident yesterday in FP1 which hampered the amount of time you and Sam got to have in the car. Looking ahead of you, you've got a bit of work to do.
Yeah, we have. Not ideal. We lost quite a bit of run in FP2, but these changing conditions I think may help us. No one's had a lot of running in this kind of condition, so it sort of neutralises our disadvantage a little bit.
So what is the plan for these conditions then?
Just wait and see what unfolds in front of me. Try and keep out of trouble for a couple of laps and see what goes on.
Yeah, I'm having a quick peer at your tyres. You've gone for the slicks then, even though it's declared wet, you've gone for the slick start.
We're on slicks, yeah. Slicks is the right tyre.
Fair enough, good luck.
Yes, that seems to be the general consensus, doesn't it? Richard is quite a character, isn't he? And Sam, his son, is such a young driver, such an inexperienced driver, and yet yesterday he was as quick as your Yelmer Bermans and, you know, and some of your factory GT drivers out there on the grid. Real talent of the future, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's also pretty handy in esports racing, as we've seen over the winter months. And Richard Neary, good northerner, he knows about rain. This won't faze him at all, will it? There is the car of reigning champion Sandy Mitchell. He now partners Adam Ballon, so Adam Ballon will do the first stint, that car starting 5th on the grid. And he will hand over to Sandy Mitchell, who of course stays in the championship. Now I just have a horrible feeling that the rain has blown back in again. It's going to be like this, I think, for the next couple of hours, isn't it? One lap it'll be less bad, the next lap it might be pretty grim, but it's becoming, at this late stage now, a real test for the teams about what they do with tyres. Now, it's not just GT3, of course. There is GT4 as well. Mark Sampson, Charlie Robertson's Ginetta. Let's discuss that with Bryn Lucas.
Mark, here we are on the grid for the first time in 2021 in the British GT. You're in a new car and you've never done a rolling start.
Yeah, and it's just starting to rain as we do this. So that's all the variables. But I guess it's the same for everybody. We just have to make a decision, I guess, on the tyres, and hopefully this rain will blow through pretty quickly and then calm down. So for me, just looking to make a clean start, get around the first few corners in one piece, hopefully nothing eventful happens, and then settle into a groove and try and put together a good stint.
You were telling me before the race that the new car is slightly better balanced than the last one from last year.
Yeah, obviously there's more weight in the nose of the V8 engine, but it's a transaxle layout, so the gearbox has moved to the rear, and the overall weight distribution is better. So it's less on a knife edge than the old G55 was. It's a bit more of a friendly, more balanced car to drive. And I think you see that when you see the body language of the car out on track. It looks pretty poised. So fingers crossed that's how it proves when we go around today.
Well, let's fingers crossed it goes well for you, and we'll see you at the end, hopefully on the podium.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Good luck, Mark. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great to have Ginetta back in the championship, isn't it, David? It's been quite a while since we had a Ginetta on the grid, but one of the most successful cars, or brands of car in British GT history, certainly amongst GT4 race victory figures. And yeah, interesting to see how that car, which is starting strongly from second on the GT4 grid, gets on in the race. I mean, the sun is out now. The weather really, it's proper British spring weather, this, isn't it? If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, because it'll be completely different again. And this is such a headache for the teams and drivers.
I love it. It's fantastic because it is an extra dimension. Yes, it's a headache for them, but it is something else that they just can't legislate for. You can do as much testing as you want. You can get the best drivers that you can. You can choose what you think is the best car for the championship, but the weather gods can throw something else at you. You've got Mercedes taking on Porsche, taking on Lamborghini, taking on Mercedes and Bentley and Aston Martin, all within GT3. Ian Logie with Yelmer Berman. Another possible winning combination here. Again, you go through the entry and there are so many competitive entries in, let's just take GT3 alone, which is now really the domain of Pro-Ams, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So no Silver Cup entrants, which we've seen for the last few years become quite popular in GT3. You must be either a Pro-Am or a silver-graded driver with a bronze-graded Am driver alongside. Taking it back to its roots, really, is how it used to be. Very much a Pro-Am series, trying to encourage more of the Ams to come and race, because when there were a whole heap of Silver Cup entrants in GT3, they were quite a bit quicker than a lot of the Am drivers, so this makes it a more even playing field. In GT4, though, we do still have some Silver Cup entrants, and those teams have to spend an extra 26 seconds in the pit lane during their pit stops, which we'll get into a bit later on. Now, David, the track there, hard to tell in a way, but it really doesn't look wet. There will be damp areas, especially, I would imagine, out on the Grand Prix loop, but right now, although it's going to be slippery, I think that is manageable.
I'd go along with that. It is drying out very fast. As I say, it is a really chilly, breezy day, but it is drying the road quickly. They've all gone for slicks, which still seems to be the right way to go. We're going to get 2 green flag laps. The second will count within the 2-hour duration. It's a 2-hour race that we have to kick off the season. So the first one is the conventional rolling start, if you like, but then the second lap behind the pace car, as it will be, is going to count within the hour, and then we'll go racing proper.
Yes, we will. It's going to be a fantastic race. I'm sure it always is here around Brands Hatch. Not the easiest place to overtake, but these conditions are possibly going to help in that regard. Away we go then on the green flag lap, and it is Aston Martin versus Lamborghini on the front row of the grid. The Beechstein Aston Martin, car number 7 of Andrew Howard and Johnny Adam, will start on the pole position. Andrew Howard, a 2-time champion, of course, in the British GT Championship, most recently back in 2015. What a sight, what a sound the cars make. I have really, really missed this. Let's take a look then, shall we, at the grid. Andrew Howard will start the Beechstein AMR Aston Martin from pole position, with Michael Igoe for WPI Motorsport in the Lamborghini alongside him. Row number 2 then, we have another Lamborghini, this time from Barwell Motorsport, Leo Machitsky making a welcome return to the championship. Likewise, Kelvin Fletcher took a year out last year, but he moves up now to GT3 with JRM. Then we've got behind the Bentley on the 3rd row, Adam Ballon in the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini, and Richard Neary, who we spoke to on the grid, in his Team ABBA Racing Mercedes. He is one of the silver Am combos in the GT3 category. Ian Loggy, Pro-Am champion last year with Yelmer Bourbon, starts 7th, ahead of Morgan Tilbrook in SRO Motorsport, making their British GT debut. Rounding out the top 10 then, we have Stuart Proctor, who is sharing with his son Lewis for Balve Motorsport, and James Cottingham with Sam Dahan at the moment, just a 1-race entry in the 2nd Ram Racing Mercedes. Just outside the top 10 then within GT3 are Nick Jones and Scott Mulvin in their Team Parker Racing Porsche, and the other Porsche, the All-Am entry of Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton. Then towards the back end of the GT3 grid, we move on to the 7th row of the grid. And that will be the Simon Green Motorsports Lamborghini of Lucky KHERAO and the Ultimate Speed Aston Martin of Michael Brown. Then we move into GT4, and it is Century Motorsport, the team that were on top at the end of last year in GT4 at Silverstone, are on top again in qualifying here at Brands Hatch. Will Byrne starts from pole with Mark Sansom in the new Ginetta alongside him. Row number 2 then will be shared by Will Moore and John Ferguson, Ford Mustang ahead of Toyota Supra. Then we go into the middle part of the GT4 field with Chris SALKELD in the 2nd Century BMW, James Kell in the 1st of the McLarens. Then it is the Stella Motorsport Audi of Richard Williams, Katie Milner in the 2nd Rocket RJN McLaren, ahead of Ashley Marshall, Nick Halstead, Dave Whitmore in the Car Gods with Sicily Motorsport Mercedes, and Alain Vallon at the back of the grid is going to start right at the back, having had an engine change in the 3rd of the Rocket RJN McLarens. Now, that is a drama, I'm afraid, for the number 77 car. That is Morgan Tilbrook in his first ever GT3 race. Dave Whitmore there, you can see at the back of the grid, as we mentioned, with Alan Valland in the 2nd of those Team Rocket RJN McLarens. But drama already, it would seem, on the warm-up lap then for Enduro Motorsport. And Morgan Tilbrook in his first ever British GT race then, David. Sadly, not getting off to the best of starts.
No, and that car looks like it has been stranded at Westfield. Now, can it get going is question 1. Was it a spin or mechanical, question 2? And is this going to delay matters? Well, technically, the race is going to be underway. Now, let's see, because we are then on this 2nd lap. And actually, the clock hasn't started. So let's have a look. Coming out of Westfield, and the car is going to appear at the top of the shot. Oh yes, it's had a spin, hasn't it? It's bounced off the barrier, so that is clearly an error, and it's not a mechanical drama that stopped the car, it's had an off, and so the safety car is going to stay out, and it will start this race now under the safety car while that is removed. So an element of confusion, I think, that the clock would have started for this lap. It hasn't. It will start next time around, and so frustratingly, to kick off a championship season, all the drama, I'm afraid, of building it up, of a rolling start, letting them loose into paddock, we're going to have to wait for, because that car needs to be removed. Peter Daly is the series clerk of the course. He's a racer himself, so you can look at this from an official's point of view as well as from the racer's point of view. Now, there is number 3 McLaren that has come into the pit lane. That was the one that had an engine change after yesterday, and clearly there's still trouble at Mill, because Alain Vallon, who is behind the wheel of it, sits there as the car is dollied into the garage.
Yeah, that is a real shame then. That's one of the McLaren driver development programme cars. There are 3 cars being run by Team Rocket RJN, who of course last year ran a car very successfully in the GT3 category, which was actually a championship contending car. They've made the move into GT4 this year with, as I said, 2 of these McLaren driver development cars, and then they have the number 2 car, which is being shared by James Kell and Jordan Collard, which arguably should be championship contenders. You'd imagine Jordan Collard runner-up in GT4 last year. So yeah, not best of start for McLaren in general, really. 1 GT3 car in the barriers and a GT4 example in the pit garages.
Yeah, Morgan Tilbrook, the inexperienced, relatively inexperienced driver who has done a bit of GT Cup this year, but go back to last year, he was in the Fun Cup, so it's a big step up, and in these conditions, but that was the point we made on the grid. You know, the less experienced driver is starting, and it's bitten. Right, the race is on. You may not think it, but it is, on account of what the clock is ticking. It's going to be a safety car start, so we have started, and at the end of, hopefully, not too many more laps behind the safety car, then we can go racing. The road is drying out all the time, even though we're at a relatively reduced pace, and of course, for the teams where your amateur driver, less experienced driver, new driver does that first stint and is not all that quick, this reduces the number of racing laps and therefore the amount of time they're likely to lose your car.
Very good point, and also, as much as we would love to see a side-by-side rolling start, in these conditions, this possibly is actually a safer way of starting the race. Not how we planned to start it, but it might mean that there's a little bit less of a risk of things going wrong into Paddock Hill Bend. So Andrew Howard then leads the race, and you can see a few windscreen wipers still on there. Kelvin Fletcher in the JRM Bentley has the windscreen wipers going, so maybe there is a bit of rain still out there. Perhaps Bryn Lucas down in the pit lane can give us a weather report.
Yeah, I can give you a weather report. It's actually dry now, so the rain seems to have gone where I am in the pits, which is very nice. But you're looking now at the number 3 car, that's the Alain Vallon car. This had a new engine put in overnight. They were struggling with a coolant issue. It was throwing coolant out the top of the engine. They were trying to work out what was going on. The issue here is nothing to do with that, though. This is a pure electrical issue. They brought the car in. McLaren are looking at it right now. They're plugged into diagnostics, and they're trying to work out exactly what's going on while Alain sits in there waiting to head back out. It's not a great sight for them, though, at this moment.
No, myself and Bryn, David, were down in that garage earlier on. There was a lot of head scratching going on. They weren't entirely sure what the latest problem was, and that's a real shame for both of these teams that are in strife before the race really starts, because we were really interested to see how these driver development drivers would get on in the GT4 ranks, and also it means that we're robbed now of the chance of seeing Marcus Clutton jump into the Enduro Motorsport car a bit later on in the Enduro Motorsport example.
Now, there's a lot of support for this man. Go Kelv, a text message to me said a few minutes ago. Kelvin Fletcher is back behind the wheel, not behind a microphone for this year. Not only, of course, is he very much a racing driver in his own right, he's a team boss now. He and Martin Plowman have their own race team that's in lower categories, other sports car categories like the GT Cup, for example, all part of the build-up ideally to take it to higher things, so start learning in a lower spotlight category. But Kelvin Fletcher and Martin Plowman teaming up at JRM behind the wheel of the Bentley. That was the plan last year before COVID got in the way, but Kelvin Fletcher absolutely delighted to be in his overalls again as a driver rather than a presenter of GT coverage. But that car is going to be one to watch. Again, keep out of trouble in that first stint. Put Martin Plowman behind the wheel in the second. It's going to be very well worth watching.
But that's something that Kelvin was really good at a couple of years ago in GT4 when he and Martin won the GT4 Pro-Am Championship, and that was very much something we saw from Kelvin. He would stay out of trouble, didn't get too stuck into silly battles and 50-50 moves. He'd hand the car over to Martin in a decent position, and then we know that Plowie is quick.
And their relationship has really gelled. There's one of the excellent Q&As that Motorsport News has been running for the last month, which has recently been done with Kelvin Fletcher, in which he makes the point that they gelled straight away, and it wasn't some driver thinking, oh good, right, you've got money, I'll take money off you and tell you anything. You know, the relationship has really gelled, not only in terms of how they share a car and look at data, but can now go into business to run a team together.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, you have to get on with each other to go into business together, I think, don't you? Or at least that's the theory. You can see here out on the Grand Prix loop, by the way, the sun is out on the pit straight, but out at the back of the circuit, there is still rain coming down on the windscreens. This is the GT4 pole-sitting BMW, which is the Will Burns and Gus Burton car, an Evo version of the BMW. It looks remarkably similar to the outgoing BMW, but it seems to be handling a bit nicer. That's what the drivers were telling me. I was chatting to Gus Burton and Chris SALKELD yesterday. They were really raving about this new Evo GT4 M4.
And this is the new driver partnership for Toyota Gazoo Racing UK. John Ferguson starts, Scott McKenna will take over. John Ferguson we've seen in Carrera Cup GB for the last season or two. Actually, Scott McKenna was there as well last year. Hello, John. And John Ferguson, the jolly Irishman, has done hundreds of laps around here in a Formula 4, some on the Grand Prix circuit, mainly on the Indy circuit. And if John knows nothing else, he knows where the Kentagon is, because if you come to the Formula 4 Festival, then you have to go for a pint at the Kentagon at the end of it. And I'm glad to see that Speedworks are being able to relay the message that you're on camera, so wave. And Jolly John Ferguson is, as I say, doing the first stint. Scott McKenna, we've seen him winning Ginetta GT5s, we've seen him do well in Porsche Carrera Cup last year. Okay, he's new to GT4, he's new to the car, but he's going to be another one to watch as the year goes on. That's another combination you ignore at your peril.
Yeah, absolutely. And that car was quick last year. They seem to be plagued by misfortune, that team, really. They should have had a lot more podiums than they ended up getting, and they certainly should have won a race. But right from the off at Alton Park at the start of last year, that Toyota looked like the full package.
Now, as you look at number 6, Mercedes going into Surtees, into the pit lane is coming the low loader with the Tilbrook McLaren on the back of it. So the road is now clear. It's up to Peter Daly to decide whether he lets them go this time or gives them one more lap, possibly at a quicker pace, to really get the Pirellis up to temperature. Yes,
because they'll have lost a lot of heat. Obviously, when they go onto the cars, they come out of ovens, which keep the tyres up at a nice temperature. But of course, they were sat on the grid for a while. They've now been driving around in this sort of drizzle that we have here at Brands Hatch this afternoon. Tyre temperature will have dropped, brake temperature likewise, and when you arrive at Paddock Hill Bend at full racing speed for the first time, you want those to be nicely up to temperature.
And the lights are out, so we are going to go this time. Good on you, Peter. So he gives the instruction. Lorna Vickers behind the wheel of the safety car will start to accelerate clear to therefore give Andrew Howard, who will head the pack, the space to go racing. So finally, green flags are ready, Andy.
Yeah, let's properly now get the 2021 season underway then. After a safety car start, we are about to get to racing speed with Andrew Howard in Beechdene Aston Martin at the head of the field. He accelerates out of Clark Curve, comes across the start-finish line, and we are racing in 2021. Andrew Howard leads them into Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, with a pair of Lamborghinis right behind him, Machitsky already on his toes to try and get up the inside of Michael Igoe. And here, a bit further back, we've got James Cottingham, a much newer car than he's used to racing, it has to be said. He's a bit of a historic racing ace, making a move there, I think, on Stuart Proctor into Paddock Hill Bend. They're all cleanly through the first corner or so, and no one, for the time being at least, getting too carried away.
I like the rather cheeky flash of the lights from Michael Igoe on the start there to try and unsettle Andrew Howard. Got to get up earlier to do that, though. So riding on board with Adam Ballard at the moment, 5th. In the Lamborghini, they all concertina down towards Surtees. There is James Cottingham, rather cheekily having a look on the inside to try and get past Ian Logie. Ian's much more experienced, a modern-day GT racer, but James Cottingham, who is a very accomplished historic racer indeed, going from 1960s cars even up to sports prototypes of the early noughties, he is taking to GT racing, GT3 cars in particular, like a duck to water, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, Seamus Jennings there in that G-Cat Racing Porsche is also looking really strong. He topped the warm-up times this morning. read into that what you will, but he's on his toes here to try and get up the inside of Stuart Proctor. This is all getting a bit dicey through Westfield, and now Lucky KHERAO gets a run on him. And just as I say nice things about Seamus, he ends up losing a place and falls to the back of the GT3 field.
And there, Adam Ballon is under attack, look, from Richard Neary. That is for 5th place. I was about to point out as well that on the back of that little GT3 fight we were looking at was the GT4 leading BMW, which is staying with them. Will Burns doing a very, very impressive job in the BMW M4 then for Century Motorsport as the leaders come across the line then. Proper flying lap in the book. Andrew Howard leads, Michael Igoe is there. Richard Neary goes to the outside line against Adam Ballon. The Mercedes brakes very, very late going into paddock round the outside. Tries to go Richard Neary. That was brave, and it didn't quite work. He stays on the island, but that was a really courageous effort from Richard Neary.
Yeah, and a big squeeze by Ballon on the exit of the corner, and Richard, I think, had to bail out of it, otherwise they both might have been heading for the barriers. That was pretty tight as they went out of Paddock Hill then. So Howard then leads the first lap by not very much over Michael Igoe in 2nd place. Igoe less than a car length behind him as they go into Surtees. Machitsky 3rd, Kelvin Fletcher 4th. That's grid order, but game on here for the race lead, and more headlight flashing here for Michael Igoe. He wants to relieve Andrew Howard of this race lead.
Ain't happening though, is it? The gap at the start of the lap was 3/10. Igoe had done the quicker lap at the end of the first flyer, so that Lamborghini has got pace. He wants to be ahead. It's Machitsky 3rd, it's Kelvin Fletcher 4th. Adam Ballon is there in 5th place. In 6th spot still Richard Neary as they power now out of Westfield. But Andrew Howard, is he a cork in the bottle? Igoe on this section certainly looks like he's got greater pace, doesn't he? Now he's a little bit stuck. He knows he's got to get past the Aston as quickly as possible before Machitsky or Fletcher gets up with him.
Yeah, Fletcher was all over Machitsky there into Sterling, so we could see a few positions changing here in the leading quartet. On board with Kelvin Fletcher, a much better exit out of Sterling's, pulls to the outside of Machitsky into clearways. Now the grip might be on the outside line in the wet conditions, but he didn't fancy braving it out. An example there, I think, of that cautious driving style that we were talking about for Kelvin Fletcher pre-race. Into paddock, Igoe has a big look at the inside for Andrew Howard, a sort of half effort to go through. He has a good exit out of paddock though, and this time he is fully alongside, and Lamborghini goes to the front. WPI Motorsport then leading the way, and now Igoe should be able to pull away because he looks in these conditions to be a bit more confident than Howard.
But Andrew Howard there did the right thing. He gave him racing room. He wasn't going to get into a fight and risk either of them going off or indeed be caught by the others. So he knows that in his armoury he's got a Johnny Adam. We've also had Richard Neary get past Adam Ballon and pull away. And behind this, in 7th place, there you can see the Mercedes, is James Cottingham. First ever GT3 race. He's done the fastest lap of the race. I know it's early, but James Cottingham, welcome to modern day GT racing. Come back again because this is a really impressive debut.
Well, he's pulled nearly 4.5 seconds on Loggy in the last lap and a half.
Yes.
That is astonishing, and Ian has done many more laps in that car than James Cottingham has, and now he's challenging Adam Ballon, who's been a championship contender for the last couple of seasons. Into Sheen Curve is not really where you want to be overtaking, but he had the run, saw the gap, bailed out of it at the last second. What about Sterling? The Mercedes is good on the brakes, but so is the Lamborghini. Ballon stays ahead for now.
James Cottingham contrasting this with all the historic sports cars he's driven, and he's thinking, it's got aero, it's got grip, it goes where I point it, this is mega. And you can see the pace that he's got. He's right there on the back of Ballon then as the leaders go by, with Igoe clear by 1.2 seconds, and now Michael Igoe has done the fastest lap of the race. Howard is 2nd, Machitsky still 3rd. You're on board 4th. This is Kelvin Fletcher's view. There's barely a spot of rain on the windscreen now, and he is looking for a way to get past the Russian driver Leo Machitsky, and these two are lapping quicker than Andrew Howard, so 2nd, 3rd, 4th are starting to bunch up.
Yes, and Richard Neary's only a couple of seconds behind them and sort of matching their pace too, with a 1:29.2 on the previous lap, so we could get a big queue of cars here. And in these conditions, when you can search around for a bit of grit, maybe you don't have to stick to the traditional racing line, perhaps they will be able to find a way past the Aston Martin. Out onto the Grand Prix loop we go. Bentley Continental of Kelvin Fletcher has been topping the speed traps pretty much all weekend, so it is good in a straight line. It's a big, imposing car to have in your mirrors as well, but Leo Machitsky is a very experienced driver, and he's not made a mistake yet.
So Kelvin Fletcher then, hard at work, comes out of Westfield, makes the climb up towards Sheen Curve. Again, we've talked about it in the past. Brands Hatch is not the widest of circuits, so to make a pass, you have got to be brave, you've got to be committed. But right now, the Bentley looks the quicker, looks the stronger. That Lamborghini dancing around the road looks a lot more nervous up front. And here's the grunt and go Bentley then. Is there going to be an opportunity to make the move at Clark Curve? Not this time, but look, Leo Machitsky is feeling that pressure.
Yeah, he is. Gets off the corner well, though, actually. Fletcher needs to time this better. I think he is quicker, and you're right, he can carry more speed through the corners because that front-engine Bentley just has a bit more stability in these still quite greasy conditions. The trouble is you can carry all the mid-corner speed in the world, but if there's a car parked on the racing line, you can't really drive through it, and it's difficult to go around it. So Leo Machitsky is making this difficult, and Fletcher gets very sideways through Druitt. I think he almost ran into the back of Machitsky there, and as he maybe had to dab on the brakes to avoid him, that unsettled the car. Good save made there by Kelvin, though.
It was indeed, yes. So got a little bit too close for comfort. However, there was no tangoing involved in that. He saved the slide, and Kelvin Fletcher will be able to catch back up as Adam Ballon is still having to go defensive. James Cottingham all over him like a rash. So you've got the Barwell-run Lamborghini ahead of the Ram Racing Mercedes, which was really an entry on the grid courtesy of Sam DeHaan wanting to do the race, and James Cottingham said, yeah, go on, I'll drive it with you. I'm glad he did, because he's looking really, really strong. Now, what's going on in Toyota Gazoo Racing UK world? John Ferguson here, hard at work behind the wheel of the Supra, another car that makes a great noise, that, and within the overall order at the moment, where do you find the Toyota of John Ferguson? He is in 19th spot. He's second in Pro-Am in GT4.
Yes, overall in GT4, it's the Will Brigade. You've got Will Burns and Will Moore first and second, actually separated by the Ultimate Speed GT3 Aston Martin. Up the inside line looks Chris Salkeld then in Harriet's Chariot, and he gets into the side of the Toyota. Off goes John Ferguson, backwards into the gravel trap, and I don't think he'll be able to dig his way out of there.
No, and that, I'm afraid, is going to be a yellow flag, isn't it? It's going to be a safety car to get him out. John Ferguson then, with only a little rub, it's enough to unsettle the car because it's all loaded up as you turn through the corner. Around it goes. Slippery road as well, making it harder to save. And yes, there's going to be a case to answer there, isn't there? So whether we're going to have the race neutralised, we'll wait and see. The one possible thing that might just help is that wet gravel compacts, but these are heavy cars. So can John Ferguson gently dig it out of there, or is it going to have to be a snatch vehicle? The other thing is, it's going to be close to the edge of the road. I'm not overly optimistic about this.
No, well, if you cast your mind back to Brands Hatch last year, we had a safety car caused by the Team Parker Racing Bentley going off in exactly that position. So, very similar situation. You'd imagine, therefore, a similar outcome safety car-wise. Yellow flags then out at Hawthorne. Here is the replay. Salkeld had the run, and he had the inside line. To be fair, he's just not fully alongside. Really hard to tell from that angle who to give the blame to. Just an unfortunate meeting in the middle, really.
This is how John Ferguson felt it. Turns in. Bang. He was ahead. You could not see that BMW. He was ahead.
Yes, he was. Salkeld will claim that he was up the inside and he can't just turn into me, but then racing drivers don't often agree in situations like this, do they? There are two sides to every story. What we can say for sure, though, is that Toyota is going nowhere, so the safety car is being scrambled.
Indeed so. So we've had a safety car start, and then safety car deployed in the race, and you can see how far through the gravel John Ferguson has gone. Despite my optimism about wet gravel compacting, he's not going to get out of that beach, I'm afraid. So that's a real shame, isn't it? A car that we've just been talking about the pace of, and it seems that whatever else has happened over the winter, the bad luck gremlin is still living at Speedworks. It's not gone away.
No, absolutely not. And again, the pace that car and that team have is not really yielding the results that they deserve, you could argue. But it's a long season. They'll be back again next time, I'm sure, at Silverstone to try and hopefully get that first victory for the Toyota in British GT. So, race neutralised then behind the safety car. Michael Igo's lead that he built up, which was actually only a second or so before the safety car came out, that will now be disappearing. In fact, he already has. Andrew Howard has caught him as they go on to the Grand Prix circuit. Howard second, Machitsky third, Kelvin Fletcher fourth, Richard Neary fifth, and Adam Ballon sixth. Cottingham will be a bit frustrated in a way that he didn't get past Ballon before the safety car came out, because then the safety car would have bridged that gap to the leading group. But Cottingham, I'm sure, will be keen to move forward again on the restart as we get another look at the contact down into the right-hander, and there's the contact, and around goes the Toyota.
John Ferguson gave plenty of room to Chris Salkeld, and have a look out of the front of the car. Find me a BMW. You can't see it.
No, you're absolutely right, and Unfortunately, it is the car on the outside that's always going to come out worse of that, and SALKELD will not have done that intentionally either. It's worth stressing. You know, they are out there to race after all, but you need to know, don't you, as an AM driver especially, which moves to go for and which ones to back out of. You know, we've got nearly an hour and 3/4 left of this race. Risk versus reward. Was it worth putting your car in that position? Perhaps not.
Exactly. It's not a 20-minute Ginetta sprint, is it? You know, there's a co-driver to factor in who's also paying money to be in the car, and there are more ways to win a battle, as you say. Yes, knowing when to hold and when to fold. Anyway, the net result is we've got a Toyota in the gravel. The safety car is on track, and let's have a quick look at some of the top speeds along the Brabham Straight. And the fastest, because he's got heavy dancing shoes on, is Kelvin Fletcher, 142.7 miles an hour. Seamus Jennings is quick in the Porsche, 141.2. Andrew Howard third in terms of straight line speed, 141, give or take, miles an hour. Then Richard Neary, and of course that man James Cottingham, fifth in terms of ultimate speed through the first speed trap, which is along the Brabham Straights, along the, in fact, where the timing line is, so coming out of Clark Curve towards Paddock. Fastest lap, by the way, Leo Machitsky. So we've been talking about him coming under attack from Kelvin Fletcher, and he has now been able to set the fastest lap. The incident involving Chris SALKELD and John Ferguson is under investigation, and of course somebody with an opinion on that, Scott McKenna, co-driver of the Toyota, he's with Bryn.
Yeah, I just grabbed Scott. Scott, you had to really watch back on the screen what was going on there. From your opinion, what do you think? What's your reaction?
I think it's too early to say yet. I think we need to just have a little look through what's happened and not make any prejudgments, but you know, it's one of those things. It's nothing we can necessarily control.
Well, we've actually got it on the monitor now. If we just take you over to the monitor in your garage, if we wander over there, come with us. We'll do like a live walk and talk as we go. We're going to put it back on for you so you can have a look. Can you just talk us through, give us some reaction as you see it?
Yeah, so I think Hawthorns is one of those corners. It's really, really quick, not necessarily a big braking zone, so a lunge wouldn't be my choice of manoeuvre there. It's one of those things. These things happen, whether it's one of those where there is blame to be had, or it's just a race incident. I'm not quite sure, but it's a shame we're not out. We've got 1 hour 40 to go, so we've got a long time yet, and hopefully we can pull back some of that.
Okay, so you're hoping to be able to get it back, get it out, and get out on track?
Absolutely, I'm hoping so. It's not looking too promising as we speak, but you never know. It's not over yet. We can keep our fingers crossed, and we'll go from here.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look great at the moment, but fingers crossed for you.
Yeah,
thanks very much.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
If they can get back out, it is worth going back out, because others might drop out, and there are points to be scored in your class. And at the end of the season, especially bearing in mind that this race is extra points because it's a longer race, so you get more for each position. Okay, they're already 3 laps down, but if they can keep circulating, and others may have a problem, even if it's only the last points-paying position in the class, it's worth getting something.
Yes, because it has been known, hasn't it, as there, you can see the Toyota of John Ferguson back on its way. Now, is there damage? That's the next question. Right. I think there is, right rear corner maybe. The car is crabbing a little, so again, they can get that fixed, but how many laps they will lose doing so is another matter entirely. But yeah, it has been known for these championships to be decided by a point or two, hasn't it? And the one thing you don't want to do is get to the end of the year, lose the championship by a couple of points and think, well, if only we'd got back into the race at Brands Hatch, if only we'd scored that extra 5 points just by getting the car to the end. So worth getting out there if they can, but given the damage that's been incurred there, that might be easier said than done.
Yeah, it's going to be a test for them, so the car will head to the pit lane. Disappointment all round, but yes, it illustrates the whack it took. We thought it was just a tag and a spin, but if it's done that to the suspension, you can see the way it was crab-like heading down towards this corner, Westfield, then it might well be completely hors de combat. It's got to the pit lane, so whether it goes completely in a straight line or not, it's still got a bit of pace in it, but going to be an even longer stop. What this now means, of course, is that the road is clear, and the safety car, which is doing, actually it's done more laps than one of the racing McLarens at the moment, still out there, but we should be going racing fairly swiftly. Lights are still on, so there's going to be 1 more lap at least behind the safety car as the Toyota arrives, and the Toyota Gazoo Racing UK, brackets Speedworks Motorsport team, go to work, assess the damage, and they'll get that crab-like Supra into the garage and see what, if anything, can be done.
Yes, they, of course, as the car came back onto the road, it brought with it quite a bit of the gravel in which it had been buried, so I think that's possibly the reason for this extra lap behind the safety car, so the marshals can get the brooms out, get the track swept, and then we should be able to go racing again this time. And of course, we're ticking now towards, we're nearly half an hour through this race. As David said earlier on, we're eating into the AM driver time now, so the gaps are all closing up, the cars are all going to be closer to each other, and that actually has an even bigger effect in GT4, because in GT4 we do still have the Silver Cup entrants, and they have to spend nearly half a minute more in the pit lane than the Pro-Ams, 26 extra seconds. And speaking to Mark Sansom actually this morning, because of course in a Pro-Am entered Ginetta, he was saying that, look, if we get a safety car in the early stages, I can let those silver graded drivers go. I don't need to fight them, because I know that I can get 26 seconds back in the pit stop. So this safety car is really going to help some of the GT4 Pro-Ams.
Absolutely right. And those two GT4 cars we've just been talking about, Chris SALKELD and John Ferguson, BMW, Toyota, they're both Pro-Am. So again, it comes back to your point about knowing, when to pick your battles, which battles to go and fight for. Safety car then should be in this time. The road now is clear. That's the race leader, lest you forget. Michael Igoe, Andrew Howard, Liam Machitsky second and third, Kelvin Fletcher fourth. You almost forget that we had rain about 20 minutes ago, don't you? Because now the circuit looking dry once again. Richard Neary is fifth, Adam Ballon is sixth, James Cottingham is seventh, Ian Logie is eighth, Lucky KHERAO is ninth, Nick Jones is 10th. And the lights should be out on top of the safety car then as it comes down towards clearways. This is the view from onboard Kelvin Fletcher's Bentley. The green flags will be ready, and so at the end of lap 13 we are racing again at Brands Hatch, and Michael Igoe has made an absolute peach of a restart. Look, he's gone, and Howard and Machitsky fight it out for second place.
Yeah, Machitsky only a car length or so behind into paddock, and he will want to get on with this now because he doesn't want the renewed pressure from Kelvin Fletcher that he was experiencing before the safety car came out. Out of paddock they go, on board with Fletcher in fourth. That's the battle for second ahead of us. Machitsky in the SRO Motorsports Lamborghini looks to the outside at Druids. That doesn't work. And then, of course, he has to get back to the inside to cover from a possible attack from Fletcher behind. And just behind us here is Richard Neary in fifth position in the Mercedes. So this is a real close group of cars heading down the Cooper Straight and into Surtees. Andrew Howard maybe now starting to warm to the task, though. Just gets a bit more of an advantage as they head out onto the Grand Prix loop.
But Michael Igoe, so impressive. When you consider that he's a relatively recent addition to National Motorsport, he is driving like a veteran, isn't he? Andrew Howard came from Mini Melia's into British GT. He's raced in European Le Mans. He's had his Le Mans involvement. Very, very experienced. Liam Machitsky, the very first GT3 champion when it was a class within the championship rather than the main class. He runs third. Kelvin Fletcher fourth. And there Richard Neary in fifth place in the ABBA Racing Mercedes. And for sixth place, you've now done it. Cottingham is ahead of Ballon. So the Mercedes has dived through. The Pink Panther takes another step forward. James Cottingham, really impressive.
And now, can he catch the next group? I suspect he might be able to. We'll see what the gap is this time as they come out of Clark Curve to complete this, the 14th lap of racing. We know that Michael Igoe has this decent lead now, but that battle for second as they continue to hold each other up, and then coupled with the pace that James Cottingham has naturally, I think he should be able to get there before much longer. He's 1.8 seconds behind that Mercedes that we can see here of Richard Neary, riding on board with the Bentley, looking backwards at Richard Neary, who again has had a pretty decent start to this race, kept out of trouble first and foremost, and has been showing some strong pace as well. Down into Graham Hill Bend they go. There is the gap at the head of the field. Igoe the leader, then it's Howard, Machitsky, Fletcher, Neary, and wait for it, there is James Cottingham, already, I would say, starting to gain on them.
He has just done the absolute best of anybody in the first sector. He's a weapon. So James Cottingham is absolutely flying. Sixth place, the fastest lap of the race is a 1:27.3. Now, Igoe is in clear air because he's the leader. Then you've got this queue of cars. The next one in clear air is Cottingham. So he can maximise this for the next lap or two, but it won't be long before he's up with Richard Neary.
Yeah, absolutely. And once he gets there, he'll want to try and pounce quickly because you do get quite a bit of aero wash in these GT3 cars these days. That's why these cars that are running nose to tail are holding each other up. Even if they're not running side by side, you just can't run as quickly behind another car as you could in clean air. So if you're James Cottingham and you're arriving with some momentum, you want to take advantage of that, because once you get sort of sat behind them for a lap or so, you sort of end up running at their pace. So I'm sure he will have a go when he gets there. He's made some good overtakes already in this race. It'll be interesting to see how far up this top six now he can climb.
Indeed so, and Kelvin Fletcher in the meantime sees Richard Neary coming, so he wants to get on with this quest to get past Leo Machinsky, and out wide goes Kelvin Fletcher, gets it back onto the road, but a tiny little error could spell disaster. He got away with that, but look, Richard Neary now is right on his tail.
Yeah, the Mercedes is looming large now behind Kelvin Fletcher's Bentley. Down into Graham Hill Bend they go. Now, Neary will have seen that. He'll want to take advantage. He knows that Fletcher's got a bit of dirt on his left-hand side tyres. It might have rattled Kelvin a bit as well, put him off his stride. So now is the time to attack, and Neary is attacking. Takes a very tight line through Surtees, but tight on the way in, is slow on the way out. And all of the headlight flashing in the world, Richard, is not going to buy you that speed back down the straight.
But it might just force a little mistake out of Kelvin Fletcher. There's Igo in the lead. Howard is second. Leo Machinsky third. That car looking really nervous at the start of the race, looking a bit more stable now. Kelvin Fletcher is the one feeling the pressure. He's fourth. Richard Neary is there in fifth place. And then James Cottingham is sixth. His last lap was a 27.9, which means that he's on a comparable pace to the race leader at the moment, in actual fact. And there are purple sectors coming from Andrew Howard, from Kelvin Fletcher in the middle sector here. The middle sector ending just at the approach to Stirling. So the road gets drier, and as the cars get lighter, and as the tyres get warmer again, so they're going quicker.
Yeah, definitely the track is now quicker than it's been at any point, isn't it? We're seeing not just purple, but green personal best sectors coming in, left, right and centre as well. Right, back to GT4. There is Will Burns. Well, the other Century Motorsport car's been in the wars, but this one is still running really strongly. He leads the way with now Will Moore not that far behind him, actually. Michael Brown has finally overtaken the GT4 leader for position, I remind you, in that GT3 Aston Martin. So there are now no cars between the top two in GT4. And of course, it's the Mustang from Academy Motorsport that won here last year. So no surprise really to see it running well again.
Yeah, that BMW, the Will Burns, Gus Burton car, is an interesting combination of drivers, because it was Will that won the Ginetta Super Cup last year from Gus. So if you can't beat him, join him, seems to be the go there. And they've made a good combination. Gus Burton was very quick but really unlucky in the British GT Esports Championship that we had at the start of the year, that was won by James Baldwin. But Gus made the move to Esports GT3, had pace, but seemed to get all the bad luck in the world. So he's back behind the wheel of a GT4 car. There is the BMW ahead of the Mustang. And those two have checked out, haven't they, as far as the Audi there is concerned. That's got a whole queue behind it. McLaren Ginetta next up, but the Richard Williams-driven Audi, so busy defending, it's falling away from the top two.
Just to show how much lockdown changes your outlook on life. I never thought I'd see the day, David. I heard you referring to esports events at the British GT race, but British GT had their own esports competition, of course, which I know you were involved in, and it looked fantastic. And yeah, good to see a lot of the real-world drivers getting involved and maybe managing to generate a few more esports racing fans. Right, back to the real thing now, though. Richard Neary here continues to apply the pressure to Kelvin Fletcher, and as he does so they fall back away again from Howard and Machinsky up the road.
Richard Neary tries the inside line, heading up towards Druids, thinks about it on the inside line. Fletcher goes wide. Richard Neary tries to get up alongside him on exit of the corner. Couldn't quite do it as they come down the hill. Does he try the inside line for Graham Hill Bend? Not quite. Again, he's got the pace. Now, can he make a move at the end of the straight going into Surtees? Just a little bit too far back. Kelvin Fletcher has still got the wiper on, but Richard Neary showing intention. That's Cottingham making a mistake. He has been our star turn thus far. He's just about got away with that, I think.
Yeah, I think he went through the grass, maybe the gravel, but I just caught a glimpse out of the window of him rejoining the circuit. Let's see if he's still there. We wait. Well, he is, but he's dropped back behind Adam Ballon now, so a lot of the hard work that he's done in the first 30 minutes of this race sadly has now been undone, and with dirt on his tyres, he's actually now holding up his teammate Ian Loggin. Don't forget that as impressive as this performance is for James Cottingham, at the moment, this 69 car that he shares with Sam Dahan is only racing here this weekend, so if at any point in this race 69 is ahead of 6 and 6 looks a bit quicker, I wonder whether maybe there'll be some messages flying backwards and forwards over the radio. Here's the moment, David. Hard to see what starts it, but certainly ends up off the road.
He does. I think he just got himself on a slightly wet patch under braking, and rather than fight the car, just eased it on the wrong line, admittedly, but let it flow. So James Cottingham does lose time. Richard Neary, in the meantime, though, he's right back onto the tail of Kelvin Fletcher. Now here he comes again. He had a go here, a lap back. The Mercedes looks to be pretty good on the brakes, but not as good as it needs to be this time. The gap comes down through the corner rather than into it. So again, Richard Neary is almost there. So Neary, and yet so far, you could argue. He comes out of Graham Hill Bend. Again, the car twitches a little as he comes onto Cooper Straight. But Kelvin Fletcher, looking unflappable, isn't he?
Yes, but again, he has this sort of steely reserve, doesn't he? Doesn't make many mistakes. He absorbs pressure pretty well. We saw that from his GT4 Pro-Am campaign a couple of years ago. Speaking of GT4, here is the Ginetta then. Mark Sansom still at the wheel, and he's got Chris SALKELD behind him. Now, Mark, watch out, because Chris is not backwards in coming forwards, as we've seen, and as they head out onto that GP loop, the very powerful BMW, I'm sure, is going to be looking to make another move.
Now, you talk about that BMW, just to finish the story, the Toyota has officially been retired, so the damage is sufficient. So the damaged suspension is done for the Toyota. It is out of the race, I'm afraid to say, whereas the aggressor Chris SALKELD carries on in 19th place overall. That's going to be investigated after the race.
Right, OK, yeah, I'm sure that discussion will rumble on for a while this evening. This then is the fight, as you said, for 18th place overall, but for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th place in GT4 overall. And Mark Sansom is actually leading in the Pro-Am element of the race. This is essentially the battle for the GT4 Pro-Am lead. And actually, having said that the Ginetta might be under pressure in a straight line, they've got a good engine, haven't they, now, in that brand new Ginetta? And he gets away from SALKELD slightly and reels in James Kell ahead. Now, Kell, of course, has had a car change over the winter. He was in the Toyota, and now he's part of the Team Rocket RJN squad, sharing with last year's GT4 runner-up Jordan Collard.
Yeah, and James, I know he didn't have a win last year, and you talked about the bad luck the Toyota had, but James just got on with the job. He learned, he didn't make a big song and dance about it, didn't talk himself up. He was quite happy to learn and develop racing at this level for the first time, and those lessons look like they're being put into good practice, because here he is at the moment running fourth in GT4 under pressure, not making a mistake. The Ginetta G56 behind. You think it's a typo, don't you? But as you say, it's the new car. Mark Sansom at the wheel of it, and then Chris SALKELD next in the queue. And we've still got an hour and 26 minutes to go, so when you put the second driver in, all of this is going to look rather different.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are certainly within 26 seconds of the overall GT4 leaders, who will have to spend 26 seconds longer in the pit lane than the Pro-Am entrance. Right, we're riding on board with a GT3 car, and we're looking back at a Mercedes. This is a bit of a theme, isn't it? This is Adam Ballon for the second time in this race, trying to keep James Cottingham behind. Now, he wasn't too successful in doing that straight after the safety car restart. Has he now learnt, maybe, where Cottingham is quicker, and how much of a risk will he be willing to take to try and keep the Mercedes behind? As there, finally, Richard Neary goes up the inside of Calvin Fletcher at Paddock Hill Bend and moves the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes up into fourth position. Fletcher tries to fight back, though, in the Bentley into Druid's corner. He's on the wrong side of the road, though, and it looks as though Richard Neary will make the move stick.
Yeah, so that Mercedes at the moment, up into fourth place, is the best of the Mercedes. The Ram Racing cars not having the same pace in this first stint, are they? Despite the efforts of Ian Logie and, of course, James Cottingham. So Richard Neary released finally. He's up into fourth place. Let's see how long it's going to be before he gets onto terms with Leo Machitsky. There is James Cottingham. So he's on the back of Adam Ballon. Ian Logie still there in 8th place, which I have to say I'm surprised about. I would have thought that Ian, with his experience, I know he's not been in it since Silverstone last year, but with his experience of the car and the circuit, I would have thought he'd be further up there. Bearing in mind that they've already been bunched up once by the safety car.
Yes, and of course Ian and Yelmer were the Pro-Am champions last year, so now that we've had this shift in focus to Pro-Am entrance really in the GT3 category, there was an argument to say they were one of the championship favourites. Now, I know we're not even halfway through the first race of the season, but you're right, I did expect to see a bit more out of them. Maybe they're fighting some sort of setup issue, or maybe they've had a knock in the early stages. There are any number of excuses, I mean reasons that they might be able to give us after for the slight lack of pace in the early stages.
The Toyota Supra out with a damaged suspension, a lower control arm, we understand, so big frustration for the team. What looked like a fairly innocuous tap did far more damage than you can tell from the outside. Right, here you go again, Ballon versus Cottingham. The Mercedes gobbling up the Lamborghini, tries the outside line up towards Paddock. And James Cottingham looks to the inside line. He's going to try and line up the move heading into Druids. But Adam Ballon is wise to that. So as you look across the diffuser there at the back of the Lamborghini, James Cottingham shows the nose outside to the inside. Can he pounce now then as the cars are about to blast downhill? He can't. Adam Ballon certainly has learned from the earlier battle that they had, because he knows exactly where to put the car.
Yes, he does, doesn't he? And he's backing Cottingham up now into his teammate Ian Logie. Logie is now quicker than this pair and is starting to close in behind. He's not quite within striking distance yet, but he's getting there. Out onto the GP loop. Now let's see who has the edge in a straight line. We're on board with the Lamborghini. That is the AMG behind us, and there is absolutely nothing to choose between the two of them. So the Lamborghini sort of has the same gap as they go into Hawthorne that it had going out onto that straight. Through the corner, though, looks as though maybe Cottingham just with a bit more front-end grip through the high-speed stuff. That is where the front-engine cars have the advantage. And there's more weight over the front axle, keeps the front tyres digging into the ground a bit more. But through the tight technical first half of the lap, Ballon maybe has the edge.
But just thinking forward here, going into the second stint, Phil Key 2.3 seconds ahead of Johnny Adam, who is 4 tenths ahead of Dennis Lind. It's going to be a tasty second half, isn't it, as Cottingham then closes right up under braking, coming down towards Clark Curve. Remember that in GT3, the start driver has to do 1 hour and 2 minutes, so they've got another 24 or so to be out there for.
Yeah, absolutely, and Hatton Ballon, as much as he's enjoying himself, I'm sure won't be that unhappy to see the pit lane window open, because he has got this immense pressure from James Cottingham behind him. Ian Logie is now right with them as well, as Ballon for the second lap in a row runs wide at Druid, but there's just not enough of a gap on the inside for Cottingham to go through. He bailed out of that particular mover, but he's asking all the right questions of Ballon, isn't he? And Ballon is just starting to let a few mistakes creep in. He's missing his braking point, he's missing the apex a little bit. Again, Cottingham takes the tight inside line at Surtees, gets a big slide on the exit as well. This is a great battle.
It is indeed, and to make the point again, James, new to GT3 racing, but you think he'd be doing season after season after season, so it's a well set up car, the Dan Shufflebottom Ram Racing Squad. There's the sister car of Ian Logie, who will give way to Jelmer Berman, but Ian Logie 13 seconds off the race lead. He's giving Jelmer a lot of work to do.
Yes, he is, and again out of the corner comes James Cottingham. He's got the inside line. No, not quite. Ballon holds on. Cottingham still looking, but wasn't able to get fully alongside. You don't really want to go side by side through Sheen Curve, I would think, but then maybe there's a reason I'm a commentator, not a GT racer, because James Cottingham was certainly thinking about it. Didn't work though, and the tight line again loses him time. Ballon stretches back out again as they come into Clearways and Clark Curve, and just ahead of them, David, traffic. We have stayed green for long enough now that they have caught the back of the GT4 ranks.
Indeed so, and I'm just getting, as you look at the traffic, there's the Sicily Motorsport Mercedes being negotiated. That is Dave Whitmore at the wheel of it, but that car, it's a team new to the championship, very successful in British touring car circles, Sicily Motorsport, Dave Whitmore at the wheel. I'm getting a bit worried about Calvin Fletcher, because his lap times have really dropped off. Now that he's not having to fend off Richard Neary, he's lapping in the 29s, but those ahead are in the 27s or 28s, and that Bentley, admittedly, these cars are in the 29s, but they're squabbling. Calvin Fletcher has nobody around him, and the lap times have suddenly dropped off, so maybe the Bentley has a bit of an issue. Unless
he caught traffic at an inopportune moment. Possibly. If you catch a GT4 car through Sheen Curve or Sterling's, for example, you can lose a second and a half in a corner just by having to bail out of the move and following them through. So give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll see what his lap time is like now, back in clean air again. On board in the front grille here of the Ram Racing Mercedes of Ian Logie as he heads through Westfield Corner. Grandstand view of that battle ahead of him between Ballon and Cottingham that's still raging on here for 6th position. Cottingham keeps looking at all of the same places, but they're not working, are they? I know he's hoping to force a mistake out of Ballon, but he's going to have to get really inventive here if he's going to actually make a move. Yeah, the move at paddock starts now. Good run out of Sterling's. Do not make a mistake. Get the momentum through Clark Curve. Get the line right so that you're close coming up towards the line, and then you can pounce. Let's see, is he near enough? The Lamborghini, good with the aero, cuts through the air nicely. Ian Loggie's view as Cottingham again lines up for the inside line. Oh, so close. Go on, James, is he going to commit? There's contact, and around they both go! Both into the gravel. Ian Logie survives it. They're both on the lip of the road. Cottingham committed, but maybe it was a bit too late. We'll see it from the outside, hopefully. That's surely going to be another safety car, because they are absolutely on the lip of the road. Safety car straight away is called for by Peter Daly, the clerk of the course, and quite understandably so. And James Cottingham, I'm afraid, has blotted his copybook a little bit there, it would appear, from the onboard shot. We'll see it from the outside, I'm sure, and the race leader manages to get a back marker between himself and the opposition as we go safety car for the second time. Poor, high drama, and that's a real shame that James Cottingham's race ends that way. Shame Adam Ballon's race ends that way, but for a GT3 rookie, James Cottingham had been absolutely outstanding to that point. Yeah, certainly the most exciting driver on track in that first stint, but you sense there was maybe a bit of frustration creeping in there. He'd been sat behind Ballon so long. He'd passed Ballon once already in the race and then threw it away with that mistake at Surtees, and he tried so many times to make the move cleanly. Finally had the inside line, and you sense that he kind of thought, well, I've got the inside, I've got to go for it now. but he was just a bit too far back. There's that big bump in the road as you brake for paddock as well, which can unsettle the car. We'll see a replay momentarily, I'm sure, of what happened, but a real shame that what had been a star performance up to that point has to end in the Paddock Hill Bend gravel trap.
Indeed. The only consolation from Adam Ballard's point of view, you could argue, is that the bite of bit in all of that, because it's not just him that's off, it is the aggressor James Cottingham. But they're trying to get them out, I think, aren't they? They're so close to the edge of the road, just a bit of traction, and they might just be able to go forward. Well, that's the leader, Michael Igoe, and we have then Andrew Howard in second place, Leo Machitsky third. Gaps slightly irrelevant, but what is interesting, of course, is the traffic between the first and second cars. So there's the BMW that had fallen behind but has been waved back past the lead car, so it will get its lap back, and that was a very, very good example of how a safety car period should be done. Call for the boards and the flags, everybody slows down, safety cars there ready and waiting, the officials well briefed, wave past the back marker and pick up the race leader. Perfect. Why can't it always be like that?
Yes, I'm not going to give you an answer to that one, David. What I can tell you is what happened at Paddock Hill Bend. Let's have a look then. Joe, Cottingham's not that close, is he, really? Ballard's defending when he doesn't really need to, leaves the door open, and Cottingham, I just don't think that was going to work.
No.
He was a long, long way back. Ballard was always going to commit to the corner, and then you hit that bump just there. You can see the car hop, and at that point the car goes light, he can't get it stopped, but of course it's too late to do anything about it by that point. You've committed to your braking point, you can't brake any harder, and he probably knew that they were going to make contact long before they actually did. Not a big hit, so it shouldn't have done any damage to the cars. I don't think there's any secondary contact either that's worth worrying about as they slide simultaneously into the gravel trap, so hopefully they'll get going again.
Just look at Ian Logie here, because he's watching that ahead of him. Now look how close he got to the edge of the road. He was way off the apex.
Yeah.
So it's almost as though he was judging his speed against James Cottingham. And I think you're right, the door was left open by Adam Ballard, and it was almost as though James was so focused on the door's open, this is my big chance, that got in the way almost of assessing where he had to stand on the anchors.
Yes, indeed. The spectators that are situated at Paddock Hill Bend then getting their first taste of drama in quite a few months, I'd imagine, trackside. Good to have the spectators back. That's always a popular place to go and watch from, and we can see why. Right, let's head down to the pit lane with Bryn.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I'm here with Sam. Sam, you just witnessed what happened with your teammate. From your opinion, what did you see?
I think James just went for a move, and he came from a little bit too far. Maybe the door wasn't left as far open as he thought. It's unfortunate because I think that he had a really good stint. He was driving the car really well. He's been improving, every session this weekend, and he had a great start to the race, as everyone saw. So it's a bit of a shame, but these things happen. It's racing.
It was a real fight between him and Adam. We've heard a little bit about aero wash coming into play here and not being able to get past. Is that one of the big problems? And James maybe just decided to chuck it in the corner, hoping to get through?
Yeah, I think when you get within 10th or 2 tenths of the car in front, you can have a serious issue with aero. Every car has the same thing, but you just have to bide your time and pick the right spot. And unfortunately, James just might have picked the wrong time to go for it then. But like I said, that's racing. Some come off, some don't.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you turn to the screen for a second, we're just going to put on the replay. If we can get an immediate sort of reaction, try and get your thoughts as we put it up for you. Here we go. What do you think happened there, if you talk us through?
I mean, it's close. It's a 50-50. Half the time then that could come off, sometimes it doesn't, and that happens. It's a shame for Adam and for James, but I'm sure he didn't mean it on purpose. But hey, these things happen.
Yeah, racing incidents, sometimes you've got to go for it, haven't you?
Thanks anyway.
Thanks, Sam.
Cheers.
There's the replay again, and I come back to Ian Logie. I mean, he was heading off in his own incident.
Yes, when I first saw it, I assumed he was that far to the outside because he was sort of distracted, didn't know where they were going. But I think you're right. I think he was that focused on what his teammate was doing, braking point-wise, that he almost followed him off. Right, that is Adam Ballard back in the race. I don't know whether they've managed to get the Ram Racing Mercedes back on track as well. He's throwing gravel all over the racing line through Druids, for which his fellow drivers will thank him later, I'm sure, because that's going to make life a bit slippery on the restart. But he will bring that car possibly into the pit lane. They don't want to make an extra pit stop, of course. They can't count this as the mandatory stop because the minimum driver time for the GT3 drivers hasn't yet elapsed. But if there's no damage, I suppose, he can pick up at the back of the queue, and I think he's only lost the one lap, hasn't he?
Thus far, and the safety car is going to be in this time. So Adam Ballon is just going on to the Grand Prix loop. He's almost another lap down because he's just gone out of Surtees, which is the corner at the end of the straight they're turning onto. And he's going to go to reduced pace, of course. So lights are out. Where is the Cottingham Mercedes? Has that got going again as well?
Pit lane, David.
Pit lane, right.
Yes.
Oh, he's just made it there now, yeah.
Yeah, just a corner. You can't really miss that flash of pink out the window, can you, as he came to the pit lane. So one thing I've also noticed here, David, as well, is that this has, it's an unfortunately timed safety car for the GT4 field, because some of them had gone a lap down and others hadn't. So I think that's possibly Nick Halstead, or no, it might be Ashley Marshall in the number 90 car, who I think is the first GT4 car one lap down. So everyone running ahead of him, which is about just over half of the GT4 field, essentially gain a lap on him now.
That's right, unfortunately for him, yes. So there, number 69 Mercedes goes into the garage. That will be attended to, and it might go back out for mileage. So there is number 90. It has gone a lap down. The team's saying, can we unlap ourselves? But technically you shouldn't, so the answer is no. And it means that that car's going to get gobbled up by second and third in GT3, but it also gives Michael Igoe the chance to build that margin by at least 2 or 3 lengths, I would have thought, before Andrew Howard gets up and past. So if you're in GT3, you've got to do an hour and 2 minutes. So we've still got another 10 plus before we can think about pit stops.
Yeah, absolutely. So time for the race to settle back into a bit of a rhythm, possibly, before the pit stops happen. Look at Michael Igoe go. This is the advantage of having a GT4 car between you and the rest of the GT3s, because Andrew Howard cannot pass the slower car until they cross the line, regardless of whether it's for position or to put a lap on it. And look at the time it's cost him. 2 seconds already was Igoe's advantage at the line.
So Michael Igoe is away, and they're second and third and fourth. Richard Neary through on the inside to put a lap on the McLaren as well. Andrew Howard now has got to stay as in touch as he can be. Michael Igoe's pace is one thing. He needs to fend off Machitsky and then hand that car over to Johnny Adam. But look, Leo Machitsky is all over him now. Up towards Surtees they come. Andrew Howard gives him racing room on the inside line. And Leo Machitsky, all of a sudden, is like a different driver. That car, as the road gets dry, looks a lot more stable, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, he's on his toes on these restarts. He had a good restart after the previous safety car. Wasn't able to do anything about Howard on that occasion, but he has now gone into second place. And of course, Richard Neary is now sniffing an opportunity to get on the podium.
And as they battle their way towards Westfield, there is a slow Ford Mustang out on track, which might be a problem. There it is. So the Academy Motorsport Mustang still going, it's still making a good noise, but it's dropped a lot of pace.
Damage to the left front corner, is there? The front bumper looks a bit loose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it doesn't look significant enough to reduce its pace like that, so that's an odd one. Side by side for third here now. Richard Neary is keen to get onto the podium. He's alongside Andrew Howard into clearways, tries to go around the outside. You can't do that, Richard. Not in the dry anyway, surely. It's very dirty, very slippery out there. Gets the power down well, though, and they are still side by side as they come across the start-finish line. Kelvin Fletcher is rubbing his hands with glee here as well, sensing an opportunity to take advantage. What a move from Richard Neary. He can't stop the car, though. He's briefly into third place. Howard fights back, and guess what? They are still side by side. Neary from the outside to the inside. Fletcher thinks, go on then, what can I benefit out of all of this? Howard runs out wide. Oh, this has trouble written all over it.
But what's happened to that Aston Martin in the space of a couple of laps? Because suddenly its pace has gone away. Either it can't get its tyres up to temperature quickly enough, or there's a bigger issue at play here. But Andrew Howard looks like a sitting duck, doesn't he? He just can't do anything to repel the pace of the others. They're crawling all over him. So Neary and Fletcher right there. Machitsky caught past, pulled away from with alacrity. But Andrew Howard's car now looks like it's really struggling.
I think he's just on the ropes, isn't it? I think he's lost his rhythm with that safety car, losing a place straight after it. And Neary, relatively experienced driver, of course, these days, Richard Neary, he knows that, and he knows that if he can apply the pressure, kick Andrew Howard while he's down, so to speak, then maybe this might generate an opportunity to go through into third position. There is the Academy Motorsport Mustang in the pit lane. This car, remember, won Brands Hatch last year after a brilliant opening stint by Jordan Albert, and then Matt Cowley brought it home to take the victory. Not going to do so again today. Richard Neary this time makes the mistake, runs onto the grass. He's still not back on the road, and they're almost at clearways. And Kelvin Fletcher now just powers straight past him into the final corner. The Bentley moves back ahead, and there were some spots of rain on its windscreen as well, so add in another weather change just to spice the mix up even more.
And number 69 Mercedes, James Cottingham, has retired. There is Ian Loggy all over the back of Richard Neary now to be the best Mercedes. We've seen the Mustang in the pits, an incident between that and the Stewart Proctor McLaren is being investigated as well, so there's a story attached to that as well. We'll come to when we've worried about all this Mercedes excitement, because Richard Neary is up and down the order like the whatnot straws and is still trying to fend off a very, very determined Ian Loggy behind. Right, now this is what happened to the Mustang. There is damage around the left front corner, and there's why. Up the inside of the GT3 McLaren, there's a brush between them, but the Mustang gets ahead and then goes down towards Graham Hill Bend, and there's another incident between the two of them, and the Mustang is well and truly off.
That was a bit strange, wasn't it, really? Because it was actually the Mustang moving across on Proctor. Not really anywhere Proctor could have gone there, but we think it's either a puncture or possibly some suspension damage as a result of, I guess, the contact rather than running across the grass. So Will Moore then for Academy Motorsport in the pit lane. And, of course, this is too early for that to be the mandatory pit stop, so they'll have to pit again within the next 10 or 15 minutes.
There's Lucky KHERAO fending off Nick Jones, who's going to give that car over, the Team Parker Racing Porsche. Stunning looking car, that, to Scott Malvern, Formula Ford champion for the second stint. And where are they? They are still only 12 seconds or so away from the leaders. So another safety car, they're back at the races. And of course, they are only 12 seconds back because of the 2 safety car periods that we've had. It could be a different story had it been a completely green flag stint. Richard Neary again to Kelvin Fletcher, tickles the tail of the Bentley going into paddock. He's up the curb, he's all over the grass, even with green paint, Richard. We still saw that, you're not totally camouflaged, so he can't yet find a way past Kelvin Fletcher. The Bentley hangs onto the place. Richard Neary, you cannot fault the commitment, can you? It might not always work, but he's a trier.
There used to be a rallycross course here on the inside of Paddock Hill Bend, and I think Richard Neary was almost on it there. He was so far over the inside curb, but look, he's really quick. He looks quicker than Fletcher, just can't find the way through. Probably the 2 biggest cars on the grid here. The Bentley is filling the track, and there just isn't room for the Mercedes to get alongside fully. Out of Surtees they go, almost an overlap, but not quite, and we know that the Bentley was at the top of the speed trap figures earlier on, so I don't think Neary's going to be close enough by the time they reach the bottom of Pilgrim's Drop to have a go at Hawthorne Corner. Wherever you look here, David, there is action. This is an absolutely brilliant way to start the season, and we're not even halfway yet. Brilliant.
And we can't look at all of it. There's GT4 fights going on, but GT3 further up the order. Fantastic racing. Richard Neary then crawling all over the back of Kelvin Fletcher. The clock is ticking on down, not to the end of the race, but to the end of their stint. So for many of them, it's just trying to hang on in there. Richard Neary understeers way out wide at Sterling's, and Ian Loggy says, right, my turn. If you can't get past the Bentley, let me have a go. And look at this, the 2 Mercedes almost side by side. Richard Neary brakes late, that compromises the line through Clark Curve. And now can Ian Loggy find a way by? He tries the outside, he tries the inside. Richard Neary's Mercedes, you can see it dragging width, can't you? Wherever anybody else tries to go, it is there in anticipation. But Kelvin Fletcher has gone. So busy, Richard Neary, for a couple of corners, plus that mistake. It's advantage Bentley, and this time it's Neary on the ropes to try and defend from Loggy.
Yeah, but already he's getting back after Fletcher, isn't he? When he's not making mistakes at Sterling's, Richard Neary is, I think, the quicker of these 3 cars. He just keeps getting that braking wrong into the tricky left-hander out the back. He's been off there once and nearly went off again on that occasion. Into Surtees they go then, to AMG's nose to tail, but I suspect Neary, as long as he keeps it on the black stuff, should be able to edge away again now. At the front of the field, by the way, the 2 Lamborghinis run out of different teams are 3.8 seconds apart. So Michael Igoe controlling the race, Machitsky second, Howard third. We've sort of forgotten about him now. He was the man under so much pressure about 10 minutes ago, and now, because of all of this battling, he has a 3.5 second cushion over Kelvin Fletcher fourth, Richard Neary fifth, and Ian Loggy in 6th position. And a shout out as well to Lucky KHERAO. I know others have had issues, but the Simon Green Motorsport Lamborghini are running a strong 7th right now.
There's the GT4 pit stop for the car gods with Sicily Motorsport Mercedes. Dave Whitmore to give way to Jake Giddings. And interestingly, the team manager of car 11, Kelvin Fletcher's Bentley, has just been asked to get in touch with the race director. So I'm not entirely sure what's been going on. It could be track limit related, but the team manager of car 11 has got to make contact with the race director. Looking back from Kelvin Fletcher's Bentley, he is there in 4th place. Not seen him be up to naughtiness, have we? So it might be a track limit element, but certainly not involved in an incident as such. So GT4 teams, remember, they only have to do 58 minutes as the starting driver stint. I still think that Mercedes is in a bit too early, therefore.
Yes, they do have the car up on jacks, but I'm not sure if they're actually changing tyres or not. We'll get into that in a moment or two. Nick Halstead here then, defending, or trying to anyway, from the Stella Motorsport Audi, which goes around the outside. In fact, I think it's putting a lap on the number 40, isn't it? Because Richard Williams in the 42 car is running now second placed in GT4. Will Burns still leads the way. Back out into the fray goes the Sicily Run Mercedes. So that actually was about the right length for a pit stop, wasn't it? But I agree with you. I think it probably shouldn't have been in yet.
So that'll be looked at, I'm sure, by the officials. But yes, it does look as though that Mercedes does need to come in again to serve the regulation stop. The team, although they're new to GT racing, good personnel on the administrative side, so I would have been surprised if that's a mistake, let's put it that way. We are on lap 34, and Michael Igoe leads by 3.6 seconds as you look at number 2, which is James Kell in the McLaren, still chasing Richard Williams' Audi, and actually shaking off the Mark Sanson Ginetta G56, isn't he? That gap has widened since we last looked. The traditional Team Rocket RJN colours, the Jenson Button and Chris Buncombe and Bob Neville team. Bob Neville is here, operating the McLarens, real fleet of them. Of course, we got used to seeing them in GT3 last year, now into GT4.
Yeah, a very competitive GT4 grid, but one that includes an awful lot of drivers who have never raced in British GT before. Mark Sansom is one of them. 14 I got to when I was counting them earlier on today. 14 drivers in their first ever British GT race, and the vast majority of them in GT4. So it's good to see GT4 doing what it's supposed to do and act as that sort of rung on the ladder just below GT3. Good to have a lot of new names and faces in the championship. Will Burns, not one of them, of course. Century Motorsports driver, pretty experienced sort of GT4 racer these days. And the BMW is transformed. Last year at a tight and twisty circuit like Brands Hatch, the Century Motorsports BMW M4s would have been nowhere, but they've really worked hard on this Evo version of the car, and they look like a completely different beast now. They look properly competitive right from the start of the season.
That Sicily Mercedes was an unscheduled stop. There it is again for its real pit stop. It was a puncture. So, 2 or 3 minutes before the mandatory stop, and that happened. So it's back in, and that's going to cost it dear. But Dave Whitmore, new to the car, new to the championship, would have done a good amount of learning. Car has to be empty while it's refueled. If you're wondering why a driver runs away but nobody gets in, it has to be effectively a 2-part pit stop. So nothing else can be done while it's refueled.
Yes, indeed, and that is part of the reason why we have these minimum pit stop times, just to make sure that they can do all of this safely without rushing around, because of course as soon as you get rid of those minimum pit stop times, teams naturally start trying to cut corners, trying to save a couple of seconds here and there. So it's a safety thing as much as anything else, and it keeps the racing nice and tight as well, because there's no advantage really to be gained in the pit stops. Richard Neary then down through Graham Hill Bend, all on his own now, isn't he? Now, is that because he had a slow lap? He did, yes, didn't he? A 1:31 as opposed to a sort of low 28 for the rest.
And he's fallen behind Ian Logie as well,
yeah.
So he might have had a moment somewhere because he's lost a place and he's lost a chunk of time. So Ian Logie, as we get towards the end of his stint, getting on with the job now. Fastest lap of the race, still Andrew Howard, which is a little bit surprising in a sense, given the pace of Igoe and how we had seen Andrew struggling a lap or two ago to keep them all at bay. But he's survived, he's still in that third place. That fastest lap is from earlier on in the race, admittedly, and we are just about at the halfway mark, and a very busy first half it has been.
Yes, only a couple of minutes away now from the GT3 pit stop window, if you like, opening, or the minimum driver time being completed. There is Calvin Fletcher, fourth place. You're right, though, so much to unpack from just the first hour of racing, really. So many overtakes within the top sort of half dozen or so, and that's not something, with the greatest respect, that we see a lot of here at Brands Hatch. It's been basically a dry race, and in the dry, around here, in GT3 cars, it's hard to overtake. That is all I've heard from the drivers all weekend long. If we don't qualify well, or if we lose track position at the start, then that's our day done. But they've managed it today, haven't they?
Drive-through penalty, Kelvin Fletcher. A drive-through penalty for Kelvin Fletcher. That was Richard Neary in strife at Stirlings and Ian Logie charging past him. So we know that Kelvin Fletcher has a drive-through penalty. Now we need to work out, or get the answer to, exactly why. But the drive-through penalty given for number 11, it could just be a totting up of track limit offences.
Possibly, yes. We're also getting told that car 57, which is the car that's leading in GT4, has been pinged for track limits. It's its first warning. I don't recall seeing track limits warnings, though, for the JRM Bentley. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't being given them and we just didn't know, but yeah, generally you'd expect to see something come up on the timing screen warning them of track limits indiscretions rather than just a straight-up penalty. Anyway, we'll get to the bottom of it as and when we can.
It is for overtaking before the timing line after the safety car restart, says Greg Masters, the steward. So drive-through for overtaking before the timing line on that last safety car restart.
Right, OK, possibly a GT4 car. Then made the point, didn't you? You can't overtake them until the line. Richard Williams is in then in the Stella Motorsport number 42 Audi, the car that he will now hand over to Senan Fielding, and that's one of the cars that I'm really tipping to do well this year. We haven't seen it race in the championship for a year, of course. Stella Motorsport were running the GT3 Audi more recently, as in now does come Calvin Fletcher to serve this penalty, but yeah, the Audi in the pit lane now should be strong all year, I think.
Yeah, and that's another of those plug-and-play GT4 cars. There's a lot of experience at Audi to give you the good, solid base product. You don't have to do much to it, you know. Put fuel in it, change the brakes now and again, and round and round and round it goes. So it's a good car to go GT4 racing with and to learn how to go GT racing, and yet it should be competitive. It was only, what, 3 years ago, 4 at the most, it was winning the Silver Cup in the European GT4 series, that type of car. On board with former touring car racer, reigning Ginetta champion Will Burns. Look at that, clear road ahead of him.
Yes, and that's exactly what you want to see out on the Grand Prix loop. Turns through Sterling's there in third gear. Now, this car has not yet been in to make its pit stop. In fact, I think it and the number 90, Ashley Marshall, driven McLaren, are the only two cars that haven't pitted. And he's still not pitting, carries on his way. Now, there is a minimum driver time, there's also a maximum driver time. They can't just leave him in all race and then do the driver change in the last 10 minutes. So he will have to come in soon, but they do now have a bit more strategic freedom than they used to.
70 minutes is the cut-off for both, actually, GT3 or GT4. Mike Brown is in to morph into Matt Manderson in the ultimate speed Aston Martin that wasn't all that speedy yesterday. Had a misfire, didn't it, in one of the practice sessions. Didn't sound right. The leader is in, look in the background. So there is Michael Igoe. Michael Idun into the pit lane. Leo Machitsky is in. Andrew Howard is in. So 1, 2 and 3 into the pit lane. If you're thinking, where's Leo Machitsky? Well, Barwell is the first team into the pit lane, pit in. So you sweep in, get the stop done. You want to really be at pit in or pit out, don't you? Sweep in or drive straight out without having that long drive time. But the WPI team and also the Beach Dean AMR squads in the middle of the pit lane.
And every single GT3 car is pitting because the teams want to get those AM drivers out as quickly as possible, or more to the point, they want to get their quicker driver, their pro or silver graded driver, in as soon as possible because they will be able to go quicker, and they want to maximise their driver time. So as soon as the pit window was open, look at them, all of them, that's the entire remaining GT3 field is in. It's the red and black WPI Motorsport Lamborghini that led coming into the pit lane, and about halfway down the pit lane, look, you can see the yellow and blue number 7 Aston Martin that was running in second position. So they're the two to watch for here, really. Sorry, no, it was the 63, wasn't it? Excuse me, that was second. Third place for Andrew Howard, and Andrew was about 5.5 seconds or so behind the race leader. So you'd imagine, all things being equal, that should be more or less the gap after the pit stops.
Indeed so. So GT3 cycle through. We'll keep an eye on GT4 as well because the bulk of those stops are now done, and we've got pretty much everybody having cycled through. 1 or 2 are on their out laps. So we'll keep an eye to the GT4 situation as we get there. And Johnny Adam is ready to go. Martin Plowman is ready to go. In 18, Phil Keane is about to live up to his name and be eager to get out there. And their 57 BMW has come in then. So Will Burns to give way to Gus Burson. That was the GT4 leading BMW, having that battle early on as the leader goes out then. So now Phil Keane takes on Johnny Adam, takes on Dennis Lind, takes on Sam Neary. It's going to be really interesting, isn't it, to see who comes out from all of this. But a slow stop, seemingly, from the Machitsky-Lind Lamborghini, because that has lost a place to Loggy and Berman. So what's gone on there?
Yeah, I thought so. You can see it's only just ahead now of Sam Neary, isn't it? So back into the race they go, but Dennis Lind a lot further back than he should have been. So there has to be a story there. Literally just made the point of how all of the pit stops should be equal. There are no success penalties in this first round of the championship. That, of course, will change from Silverstone onwards. But, yeah, there must have been an issue. But only so many things that can go wrong, really. Maybe a tyre got stuck and wouldn't go on or wouldn't come off properly. Maybe they struggled with the belts getting Dennis Lind in, but Dennis has done a few driver changes over the years. So, yeah, at a bit of a loss there, David.
OK, and also the Audi we were discussing is just coming in for a 10-second stop-go penalty for an unsafe release. So Senan Fielding is back into the pit lane. So he only just left, but he's in for a 10-second stop and go for an unsafe release. So Phil Keane leads in British GT. Different team, but it's a Lamborghini, and he knows his way around these cars very well indeed. Number 5 is now Lewis Proctor, who's taken over from his dad Stewart in the 720S McLaren. And just up the road ahead is 33, that's now gone to the team owner, Greg Caton, the man behind GCAT.
Yes, so we'll see what the gaps are at the end of this lap, of course, the first full flying lap under green flag conditions after the pit stops. In fact, Keane to Adam is 3.5 seconds. That is about what it was before the pit stops. Johnny Adam actually fractionally quicker than Phil Keane on the outlap, though.
And Keane and Adam doing absolute bests in the last sector. Not their own, the absolute best on the race, on their outlet. So straight away, the bar is moved, isn't it?
Yeah, and Dennis Lind outright fastest in the middle sector as well, so he got up to speed even quicker than they did. So the Dennis Lind then is, nearly 17 seconds off the lead. You've got Keane and Adam leading the way. Yelmer Berman is third, about 11.5 seconds off the lead, and he's just over 5 seconds clear then of Dennis Lind. Meanwhile, in GT4 land, things are getting entertaining. That is the Ginetta, which has now been taken over, of course, by Charlie Robertson, and he is stuck behind at the moment the number 40 Jamie Stanley-driven McLaren. And as they go down the Cooper Straight, they've also got Scott Mulvern trying to work his way through in the Porsche.
Indeed, and there, look, the Ginetta dives up on the inside line. The SRO Motorsport car is going to go through, the only Ginetta on the grid, of course. Charlie Robertson, the pro, Mark Sanson, the AM, in the car, as I say, run by SRO Motorsport. Jim Edwards Jr. and his son-in-law, Simon Traves, that operate that team. Jim Edwards Jr., the dad of touring car star Jade Edwards. And of course, his father, Jim Edwards Sr., was a Formula 3 racer for a time, a one-make star as well. So the Ginetta going really nicely. Charlie Robertson behind the wheel, and he's doing a good job to get away from all of this drama going on behind him. Martin Plowman gets up past Jake Giddings, then the Bentley goes by. Plowy's in a hurry as well, isn't he now?
Yeah, isn't he, just to try and make up for lost time after the penalty that Kelvin Fletcher incurred for that safety car restart issue, where he overtook before the start-finish line. New fastest lap, Dennis Lind, so not a huge surprise necessarily, a 1:24.9.
No, but when I last looked, it was Lewis Proctor, and he took that as I was writing down Richard Neary's name. So Richard Neary had done it right at the end of his stint, then Lewis Proctor, and as you say, Dennis Lind, a 1:24.994. The whole pace of the race in GT3 now has just gone up another notch, hasn't it?
It really has, but as there the Sicily Motorsport Mercedes runs a bit wide. Something I'm interested to see here, actually, is the dynamic between the out-and-out pro drivers and then the silver-graded drivers that are sort of acting as the pros within their cars, because usually once we get into the second stint of these races, all of the pro drivers usually are pretty identical on pace, but there might now be a bit of a variety in pace because some of the pros are a little bit quicker than some of the others, if you see what I mean. So this could be quite an interesting second half of the race now. We know that Phil Keane and Johnny Adam are going to be pretty identically paced, although Adam is gaining at the moment, isn't he, on Keane?
He is indeed then, so that car looking strong, and the race currently on lap number 42. Dennis Lind has indeed got the fastest lap, as you say. The lead gap is 3.8 seconds, and actually the last lap, possibly because of traffic, Keane pulled 8/10 or so over Johnny Adams, so it's gone advantage Lamborghini again. It could also be that Phil was just being a little bit slower and getting himself up to speed, but he's now into a rhythm. However, 50 minutes on the clock, as you can see. And we'll just keep referring to traffic from here on in, won't we? Because it is still a really crowded house out there.
Yes, and it's one of the most difficult circuits that we race at in British GT to deal with that GT4 traffic. And they're doing nothing wrong. They're having their own race, they're running their own lines. They just simply can't get out of the way at some parts of the circuit. So right here, absolutely fine, not a problem at all there. Around the outside goes Greg Caton. He's going to bring Lewis Proctor with him. They can just power past Charlie Robertson's GT4 Ginetta in a straight line. It's when they catch them through places like Hawthorne and Westfield and Sheen Curve, which are single line corners. You don't really want to go side by side through there, and that's where you can lose seconds. You know, you can work to try and gain hundredths of a second and tenths of a second on your own. You can lose huge chunks of time by catching a back marker at the wrong point.
First to fourth, Phil Keane to Dennis Lind is 15.3 seconds, but Lind is the fastest man on the circuit at the moment. As you look at the number 24 Ross Wiley Lamborghini, it still seems odd to put Ross into a Lamborghini, but there he is for this season, and experienced Ferrari, Porsche racer, trying a different brand. He was another one that got done for speeding in the pit lane yesterday, but that car, and Andy made the point early on, helped by safety cars, has kept out of trouble. Lucky KHERAO graduating to racing at this level for the first time. Now you give it to the gun for hire. That could be, to use the phrase, there or thereabouts, especially here, look, as Greg Caton is busy battling with Lewis Proctor, so they're going to hold each other up.
Yes, and Ross Wiley, of course, a former GT4 champion as well back in 2014, so he's got British GT pedigree as well, and he's sort of dipped in and out of the championship in recent years, making the odd appearance. Good to see him back for a full season. Right, Lewis Proctor and Greg Caton here then. 9th position this is. In theory, Proctor should be quite a bit quicker than Greg Caton, but I've really noticed that GCAT team have taken a big step forward at the start of the 2021 season. They are the only all-AM driver entry in GT3, and at the moment Greg's holding his own.
He is indeed. So as they come uphill then together, the fight is on for 9th and 10th within the overall classification, and indeed we're still in GT3 terms there because the GT4 drivers further back in the queue. The lead gap is 3.7 seconds. Last time around, Johnny Adam was a Nat Crotchett quicker than Phil Keane, but not enough to really hack into that. Now the other one to watch is Jelmer Berman, but he is losing time against the top two. So it's Keane and Adam, two names that have dominated British GT timesheets for season after season after season. It's like nothing's changed.
No, I know they're the two winningest drivers, aren't they? I do hate that word, in British GT history, and only one win apart, those two. They are probably the two most recognisable names in the championship, and yeah, suitable. But here we are, start of another new season. Different surroundings for Phil Keane, of course. Johnny Adam back in the familiar surroundings of the Beach Dean AMR team, and they are 4 seconds apart at the head of the field. The battle here between Greg Caton and Lewis Proctor still going on for 9th position. Proctor, try as he might, and quicker as he should be than Caton, just can't get through. Again, illustrating this point about how tricky it is to overtake in a GT3 car around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Caton gets off clearways quite well. You'd expect that, I guess, wouldn't you, in the Porsche? Rear engine, good traction off the corners, and Lewis Proctor just can't get close enough then to attack into the next corner at Paddock Hill Bend.
A point you make about the wins, yes, you're right. Phil Keane has had one more than Johnny Adam, and yet he's not got a single title to his name. So it's a bit like Jason Plato in touring cars, more wins than anybody, but he's only got the 2 championships to other people with a greater number. But Phil Keane every year comes back wanting to have that maiden title. Is it going to be his year? Well, right now he's in the best possible place because he's 4 seconds clear of Johnny Adam, last time gaining 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, indeed, but again, ebbing and flowing in traffic, I'd imagine. The actual pace in clean air of those two drivers, not a huge amount in it. Sam Neary, by the way, in 5th position, is sort of best of the rest at the moment, isn't he? His lap time's not quite as good as the top 4, but he's got a 15-second cushion over Scott Mulvern. Now, the Team Parker Racing Porsche has sort of appeared out of nowhere, hasn't it? It hasn't been running anywhere near the front all race long, but it is now in 6th position. There's Jelmer Berman, meanwhile. Jelmer Berman in 3rd position. Dennis Lind, you can see how much closer he's getting now. On the previous lap, he was about 3/4 of a second quicker than the Ram Racing Mercedes ahead. And Jelmer Berman in that number 6 car, I think, is going to start feeling the heat here before much longer. Dennis Lind is a-coming.
Absolutely right. So it's always exciting to watch Dennis Lind, and here he is for a full season. And he's really excited about this as well. Way up the curb, coming out of Surtees. Oh, this is going to be worth watching, isn't it? So Dennis Lind, who came first to this country at the Formula Ford Festival, driving the Aquila Formula Ford car. And we've seen him do well in the Danish Thundersport Trophy, Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and then international GT racing. He had that drama at Spa when he fell out of the lead last year, just getting onto a wet part of the road, and he was absolutely distraught, but he's bounced back. He's also had a very busy winter coaching people with his esports connection, and here he is back in the real world and going really fast too. The gap that he had to try and pull back to Jelmer Berman ahead of him, 1.4 seconds, and he's almost there.
Yeah, you talk about your Phil Keanes and your Johnny Adams as stalwarts of the championship, you know, world-class GT drivers who keep coming back to British GT year after year. I kind of hope that Dennis Lind does the same thing. You know, it seems like he's found a home here in British GT, doesn't it? Where he's obviously competitive, he can enjoy himself. He loves the British racetracks, doesn't he? Places like Brands Hatch, Alton Park, they really excite him. So great to have him here, and hopefully he sticks around and builds maybe a Phil Keane-esque career for his own. Out of Druids he goes, then ducks up the inside of the Team Rocket RJN car that was started by Katie Milner, now has Harry Hayek on board, and that gap between 3rd and 4th overall is now less than a second.
And it looks fast, doesn't it, the Lamborghini? I mean, I know it's a bit of a darty car. We saw that with Leo Bachitsky, and it was almost a concern then. But you can see how rapid it looks, and again, how much real estate it is gobbling up against the Mercedes. There is Jelmer Berman, who we know is not slow, another graduate of this arena of race circuit, if you like, from his Formula Renault, Formula 3 days. British Formula Renault, British Formula 3, Jelmer Berman, before carving a really good name for himself in GT cars. There's traffic ahead, 2 McLarens to negotiate. Berman splits them. Dennis Lind dives up the inside as well. I am coming through, he shouts to Jordan Collard, who gets out of the way. And now the same is true of the Balfe car that also has to dive clear. So Jack Brown gets out of the way as well, and through they go.
Yeah, Jordan Collard, by the way, second in GT4, that McLaren that they just put a lap on, the number 2 car, but he is quite some way behind Gus Burton. The timing screen is just about to update when he completes this lap, and I think it's about 15 seconds or so as they come through. Gus Burton's already long gone. Jordan Collard is 18 seconds now, but he's lost some time, of course, allowing Jelmer Berman and Dennis Lind through. So Lind continues to attack, darts to the inside of Berman, and not really expecting to be able to make the move, but just trying to create that flash of colour in the mirrors, force a mistake out of Berman. He did make a mistake. He ran a bit wide of the apex, but just not quite wide enough.
That's right. So where does he make the move? Is it going to be at Surtees? He's thinking about it. Of course, Dennis Lind hasn't done that many laps around Brands Hatch relative to Jelmer Berman, relative to most others, as their number 1 goes through badly delayed Sandy Mitchell 21st after out of balance trip into the gravel, but the car is still going, and it comes back to a point we made earlier. Keep going, persevere, get points in your class. You never know when they might be needed at the end of the season.
Yes, and of course Sandy, returning reigning champion, Rob Collard, with whom he won the championship last year, is not back this year, but Sandy is, and trying to become only the 2nd ever driver to successfully defend a British GT title. I mean, that's remarkable. All of these different classes that get championships handed out year after year, and nobody can come back the year after and win it again. And I spoke to Sandy yesterday, and he said it's just because the level of competition in the championship goes up and up and up every single year. You can never relax. Just because you have the number 1 on your door does not mean that you are the clear favourite going into the next season.
Yeah, I think Johnny Adam would say the same thing. Yes, he keeps on winning the championship, but every year it's harder.
Yeah.
So there is Jelmer Berman, who is now 4/10 of a second up over Dennis Lind, who has done the fastest lap of the race. So the fight's on for 3rd spot right now. And Dennis, when we started looking at the lead gap, was 15.3 seconds away. He's now 12.5. So obviously he is closing on Berman, but in addition, he's catching the race leader. He needs to get past that Mercedes quickly, otherwise it's going to affect the chance of any further gains up the road. Right, he's close enough to make a move, I reckon, coming into Surtees. Ooh, goes for the inside, there's half a gap. Does that force Berman out wide? Little bit, but not enough for Lind to pounce.
Dennis had 2 wheels on the grass then, so wide was he going into Surtees, just trying to tell Jelmer, oh, I'm not going to try and attack now. No, I'm not interested in the inside line. And then he whipped across to the inside, and it very nearly worked. That Lamborghini always has been good on the brakes, though, hasn't it? And again, that sort of reinforces the fact that it's really good around the Indy part of the circuit, but then through the high-speed sweeping corners of the Grand Prix loop, he just has to sit behind Jelmer, sit in that aero wash, which affects the downforce levels. All the McLarens in the way, though. Jelmer Berman just about prizes the door open going into Sterling's, but he looks like he's under pressure now. He's really having to actively defend here from Dennis Lind. Again, he drives down the inside of the road into clearways. Lind goes to the outside. He'll try and get the switch back, get back up the inside through Clark Curve, but Berman is a wily racer, and he saw that one coming.
But equally, he can't keep him there for 40 minutes, surely, as they come over the line. So Dennis Lind looks to the inside line. That wasn't on, so he doesn't force the issue, unlike others. And just up ahead are the BMWs. You can see in GT4 numbers 9 and 57. Now, they are, where now, 2nd and 3rd in GT4, getting themselves together for a battle. And actually, the leading GT4 car, am I correct in saying this, is now the Assetto Motorsport Ginetta, which is leading GT4 outright. Now, Assetto, just to make the point as you watch in GT3, Assetto is in its 1st ever GT race, 1st British GT outing for Assetto Motorsport, and they're leading ahead of the BMWs that are about to get gobbled up by the Mercedes. So that's Jelmer Berman round the outside line, and Dennis Lind wants to go with him, has to go with him.
Yes, and does go with him. They slot in between the 2 BMWs through Hawthorne. Now they're going to catch the other one. This is the number 9 of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook into Westfield. And actually Berman goes through, and it's Lind this time, who is delayed a touch on the apex. Has to just wait a second or so before he can complete the overtake. and that just gives Berman a bit of breathing space for a corner or so. Lynn's all over the curb, he's on the grass again out of sheep curb. I can see why you like him, David. He is exciting, isn't he?
Oh, I'll tell you, he is a joy to watch, and especially if you put him on a wet road, because Dennis Lynn is prepared to do things that other people aren't, and excels in the conditions. Now, let's just keep an eye on what's going on second and third in GT4. You've got number 9, which is now Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, ahead of 57 Gus Burton. Andrew won at Silverstone, remember, in the 3-hour race at the end of last year, so he knows the car a little bit better than Gus Burton does, who makes the step up from Ginetta's. That's Sam Neary, 5th, going through and just interrupting our fight for a minute because he split the two of them.
Yes, and just to complete the story in GT4, remember we mentioned earlier on that these Silver Cup entrants have to spend 26 seconds longer in the pit lane.
Yes.
That is why we've had this changing around in GT4. So the Ginetta Robertson is a Pro-Am entry, so too the BMW ahead of us, number 9 of Gordon Colebrook. So those two gained a big chunk of time during the pit stops, and it now leaves Gus Burton with a big job to do to try and regain that lost time. He is right behind his teammate, but these two are about 15 seconds now behind the Ginetta in front.
Yeah, Ginetta's gone, hasn't it? It's checked out. So yes, this is the leading Silver, Gus Burton. So he's leading his class within the category, if you like, but he wants to be the overall GT4 winner. And actually, 57, Gus Burton looks like it's got better pace. Number 9, AGC, Andrew Gordon-Colebrook. That was the car delayed a little when Chris Salkeld got his elbows out at Hawthorns early in the race, but he's certainly being caught, isn't he? That gap is coming down and down and down as the fight goes on there from Gus Burton, with the sort of half a wheel that the car has. And of course it's the M4, isn't it, that you can actually take the steering wheel of the race car and make it work on your sim these days, which is another amazing way that esports has integrated with the real world. This move is on and it's imminent, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe even into clearways, although a more sensible approach would be to get the good exit from here and have a go at Paddock Hill Bend. He's slightly tighter over the curb there is Gus Burton. Exit speed, though, is pretty similar, of course. Both identical cars, run out of the same team, but he's got the slipstream. He's close enough to have a go on the brakes into Paddock Hill Bend. If it was anyone other than his teammate, I think he might have sent it there, but Gus Burton knows the worst thing you can do is have your teammate off. Just ask TF Sport about what happened here last year in the closing stages. And of course, Century Motorsport were right in that fight as well, weren't they? They benefited on that day, and I think they've learned that maybe discretion is the better part of valour sometimes.
That could be the save of the century, this you mean, yes. So onto Cooper Straight they come. This is for 13th and 14th overall. And of course, just to play back into the hands of SRO Motorsport, they're holding each other up. So that Ginetta is being able to extend the advantage, partly because these two are getting a little bit toey and therefore slowing one another up. Plus, the Ginetta has got Charlie Robertson behind the wheel, who we know is very, very quick anyway. So it really is, with 36.5 on the clock, advantage Ginetta.
Yes, it absolutely is. I do wonder whether maybe this number 9 car of Gordon Colebrook, it had that knock earlier on, of course, when Salkeld was at the wheel. I wonder if maybe the steering's been knocked out or the tracking slightly. Perhaps explains why Gus Burton, who is a silver graded driver, of course, is just that little bit quicker. But he's closing in through Sheen. Not really going to make a pass through here. Great photo opportunity this for the team. The cars look great running in unison, but I think certainly Gus Burton would rather, who could move his car through into second place, maybe Paddock Hill Bend this time.
And Century, I know, are very, very busy courting BMW UK to say, look, you're doing it in touring cars, why not come and get involved with us in British GT? And it is being looked at, so a good result here and a good showing from two really quick cars ain't going to hurt. As to the outside line goes Gus Burton then, illustrating why he's been a star in Ginettas over the last few years in one-mate racing. Lines up for the inside line. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook sticks out his elbows. Oh, no, you don't, he said.
Team orders? What team orders? That was a fairly clear defensive move there. Two, in fact, from Gordon Colebrook. One into Paddock and another, a slightly sketchier one into Druids, but he's kept the place, I suppose. And again, I suppose you know that if it's your teammate that's behind you, they're maybe going to cut you a break, whereas some others would have kept their foot in the door there. On board then with Gus Burton, leading his class, as we've said, leading the Silver Cup in GT4. But he won't just be going, well, in fact, I know he's not just going for the Silver Cup, because he told me yesterday he wants to win the GT4 title outright, and to do that, you need to be scoring points outright within GT4. He needs this second place.
He does indeed, but he's got time to do it. Look, just under 35 minutes. The lead gap is 3.2 seconds as it's fluctuating with the traffic against the top two. They've gone by, incidentally. Third and fourth, it's still Berman ahead of Lind. But in GT4, they are about to be gobbled up, aren't they, by Scott Malvern. So look behind, that very imposing Porsche is 6th overall and needs to get past without delay.
Sounds good, that Porsche as well, doesn't it? I'm sure that they've heard it coming and now they see it flash by going into clearways, and now this might actually play into the hands of Gus Burton, because look, it's put Gordon Colebrook offline into clearways. Burton's carried more speed off the corner. They are side by side across the start-finish line, with Gus Burton to the outside, Andrew Gordon Colebrook on the inside. Don't hit each other, be careful through Paddock Hill Bend. You can go side by side through here. Bit of curb hopping there from Gordon Colebrook, and Burton does go through. An example there, a rare example actually, I'd say, of how the GT4 cars being lapped can sometimes use that to their advantage. We sort of talk about them losing out often when the GT3 cars arrive on the scene, but Gus Burton played that to perfection.
Good move that, and straight away Abel looked to stretch the advantage. So he worked hard for it, but he has now gone through, and it's a fair fight between the pair of them. There's certainly no team orders. Bryn's had that confirmed from the team. As long as they don't drive into each other, which is the golden rule, you can fight for what you want at this early stage of the season. So Gus Burton then is up into now second in GT4, and he's 17.6 seconds back from Charlie Robertson in the Ginetta.
Yeah, so they haven't actually been losing a huge amount of time then to the GT4 leader. They did on the previous lap because they were side by side and they had Scott Mulvern lapping them, but given the fact that they've been battling and defending and blocking each other, you'd have thought maybe that lead gap would have gone up. What I'm getting at is that maybe now he's in clean air, he might actually be able to go even quicker than Robertson. We could have a lead battle before the end of the race after all.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we know that Charlie is very quick. He specialises in Ginettas. It's a good light car. Charlie himself is about 4 stone wet through, so power to weight advantage possibly for the Ginetta, but the BMW certainly proved its pace at the first stint, so it will be interesting. And again, still over half an hour, there is time for Gus Burton to make some big inroads into that, whereas Dennis Lynn has got a bit stuck.
Yes, this happens, doesn't it, though? You've got all the speed in the world, and then you settle in behind another car for a few laps, and you just kind of get stuck at their speed. Your tyres start to overheat, your brakes start to overheat a little bit. This, by the way, is Martin Plowman going off at Sheen Curve. We believe it's not the only time he's done it. A long way off the track there, wasn't he?
Living up to his name, as he is a ploughing man. Off in the road he goes, and that was one. And he enjoyed it so much, then Martin Plowman decided that he'll have another go. And same place, off again. Now, we were getting a bit concerned about that car earlier on when Kelvin Fletcher lost a little bit of time. Maybe there is something lurking in the system, so to speak, because for Martin Plowman to do that twice, he's very un-Martin Plowman-esque.
And all on his own, not forced offline by anyone, not overtaking a back marker, so perhaps the car's had a knock somewhere that we haven't seen. We know it was running very close behind Liam Majitsky in the hands of Kelvin Fletcher earlier on. Maybe the two made contact at some point, and the car's not been quite the same since. Anyway, it is still running in 7th position, but at a track that Bentley's traditionally have gone quite well at, actually, not just in British GT, but in GT World Challenge as well. Shame to see it that far down the order. The penalty, of course, won't have helped that either. But yes, Dennis Lind here then. He is very familiar now with what the rear end of that Ram Racing Mercedes looks like, but he'd quite like to put it in his rear view mirrors. He just can't get close enough, can he, at the part of the circuit where it matters?
No, and yet he was a few laps ago. So what's happened to deprive him of that opportunity? As here, Greg Caton is up behind Ross Wiley, so this is for 8th and 9th places now. Another good GT3 battle that's also got between the BMs. The gap between Burton and Gordon Colebrook has really opened up markedly in the space of 2 laps, hasn't it? Look, they're barely in the same shot anymore, but Caton looking for a way past the Lamborghini. As I say, this is now for 8th place overall.
And this is Caton, bronze-graded AM driver, attacking Ross Wiley, very experienced silver-graded driver. I mean, Greg Caton is really on it this weekend, isn't he?
Yeah, but that's a very generous grading.
Yes.
If you go back to the late 90s, you know, he was in the main Formula 4 championship, and what has happened really to his grading is that he hasn't had the money to go racing year after year after year. You know, he went from Formula 4 to the TVR Tuscan Challenge and then set up his own team. He's been busy running customers, but he's not lost the ability. So it's a generous bronze grading, that.
Yes, I would argue that car is more competitive today, though, than it has been in general on its appearances in the past. And again, it's another car that's dipped in and out of the championship over the last 2 or 3 years, and it would be great to see them stick around for a full season, because although they're in a class of 1 in a way, they are the only all-AM GT3 car here this weekend. Clearly, they're capable, if they stay out of trouble, of scoring quite well overall. They're 9th place at the moment, trying to get 8th place away from Ross Wiley. Has just stretch the margin a little bit now as they come across the start-finish line.
Now there is news about the Bentley from JRM, and the news is there is no news. There's no problem, it's all fine, just an error.
Well, 2 errors.
Move along, nothing here to see.
Yes, interesting. Okay, do we believe them? That's the real question. We wouldn't necessarily be the first people that they'd tell if there was some niggly little issue, but certainly the car will have had dirt on its tyres after the first off, I suppose. That might have led to the second one. Either way, yes, there's been a day to forget, really, for them, hasn't it? Greg Caton, though, trying to still find a way past Ross Wiley. What's going on in GT4, then? Charlie Robertson, no, he's actually maintaining this gap, isn't he, over Gus Burton? So GT4, we're not missing much. GT3, Phil Keane is never any more than 4 seconds ahead of Johnny Adam and never any less than 3 seconds ahead. The gap fluctuates a bit in traffic, but it's all fairly static. This is one of the closest battles, as well as the one for third between Berman and Lind.
Exactly so, as the cars now dive into Westfield once more. So Ross Wiley learning about the Lamborghini, learning about a new co-driver, learning about a new team. But Ross, race winner last year in Carrera Cup GB, Brit Car champion, hanging on to position. In the background, also looking very, very rapid. You can see is Lewis Proctor in the McLaren now, fights back on for third. Dennis Lind thinks, right, let's have another go at this. It's quite good fun to begin with, so he's given his tyres a breather. Now he's going to push and see whether he can make use of the traffic.
Yeah, you can drop back a bit voluntarily sometimes, can't you? Just to cool down those tyres and brakes and try and get a bit of a run at the car ahead. And this might help because the number 4 McLaren there is Harry Hayek, and he's right in the way of Jelmer Berman, and Lind is up the inside now, 3 abreast into Westfield corner. And finally, after half an hour of trying, Dennis Lind is into third place, but he runs a bit wide on the exit. There's no way back through for Berman, though. A prime example there of how you can use the back markers to your advantage. And again, Harry Hayek did nothing wrong, just wrong place, wrong time. It delayed Berman by a fraction of a second, and that was all the invitation Lind needed.
And what did we say coming out of Surtees? Can he use the traffic to his advantage? Well, he certainly did. Dennis Lind has done it. And now, even though he's had a track limits warning, let's see what he can do to get away and what he can do, if anything, about catching the top 2. Behind, Sam Neary is now going to try and close on the Mercedes from the rival team. The ABBA entry closing on the Ram Racing car as there they go through paddock. So now Johnny Adam to Dennis Lind is 9.3 seconds. Keane to Lind was 15 and change. It had come down to 12.5. It's back up to 14. But with a clear road ahead of him now, Dennis Lind is going to get on with the job.
Yeah, well, let's see. He's got 27 minutes to gain 9.3 seconds just to catch Johnny Adam, and then, of course, he's got the same problem that he's just faced with Jelmer Berman, which is that it's difficult to overtake around here, but it can be done. And as we get into the latter stages now, and some of these GT4 drivers, especially those that maybe are at the end or coming towards the end of their first ever stint of racing in the championship, you know, the GT4 drivers maybe get a bit tired, start making mistakes, they maybe don't move out of the way as quickly. It can generate opportunities for the GT3 cars to finally make those moves stick. So also interesting to see what happens between the 2 Mercedes now. Does Sam Neary have anything for Jelmer Berman? He was very excited to tell me earlier on that he's been quicker than Jelmer all weekend, he tells me. Now's the time to prove it.
Absolutely right, yeah. Your money where your mouth is or something. So this is Phil Keane, the race leader. 'Twas ever thus. He's had a relatively easy stint. He's been given the leading car and he's just had to control the pace. I know it's not as easy as it sounds. There's Johnny Adam in second place, but that Aston, even with Johnny's prowess, can't really do anything about it. And the gap is 5.8 seconds. That's going up. Where's the highlighter pen packet behind? There it is. Look, the multicoloured Lamborghini goes by third. Dennis Lind, 8.6 seconds back. So straight away, he's just taken 8/10 out of Johnny Adam's advantage.
That is impressive, isn't it? And it wasn't a slow lap, really, for Johnny Adam. Maybe a little off the pace because of traffic, but he wasn't massively delayed, was he? And you can see the gap he's got on Berman now, 1.6 seconds already, and Sam Neary is now starting to close in on the Ram Racing Mercedes. So the battle to be top AMG in this race is about to start heating up. Phil Keane then out in front by 5.8 seconds, looking for WPI Motorsports' second win, of course. They did take a victory at Donington Park last year. They do seem to excel in these slightly longer races, and that was the case at Donington. They went well at Silverstone in the recent past as well. Here at Brands Hatch, they look the odds-on favourites to take the victory. Behind them, though, who's going to join them on the podium and in what order is anyone's guess.
Very vigorous waving of the blue flags there for the Marshal as the Lamborghini of race leader Phil Keane gets through the GT4 traffic, puts another lap on number 9 of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, who is still third in GT4. And as Phil Keane continues to dominate up front, let's just reflect on what a great stint his co-driver did. Michael Igoe dominated stint 1. He's in the pits, ready to talk to Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, I'm with Michael Igoe, who's been watching the screens at really what Phil Keen's been up to. Phil Keen's keeping that gap pretty consistent now. You must be pretty confident.
Yeah, very excited. The whole team is really excited, and it's just over to Phil now to do what he does.
Now, with 17 GT3 wins to his name, Phil Keen, he's one ahead of Mr. Adam behind him at the moment, so it means a lot to Phil Keen to get these wins, but of course he wants that elusive championship.
Yeah, definitely. Phil's been runner-up now 4 times, I think it is. Hopefully this year will be his year.
Yeah, he's always the bride. And for yourself, how does this relationship work? I know you've been racing the GT Cup, so you've been building that relationship.
Yeah, no, me and Phil are getting on really well and working well together, done a bit of winter testing. We've just been working really closely together, and things are starting to pay off now.
Well, we'll see what happens. Michael, thank you. Good luck.
No problems. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael's got through quite an impressive roster of co-drivers in his brief time in British GT, hasn't he? But now forming a relationship with Phil Keen, and a successful start it would appear to be, because 6 seconds is now the margin, 23 minutes on the clock. I'm not entirely convinced that's going to come down much.
No, certainly there's nothing to suggest that it will at the moment, is there? Phil Keen out of clearways then, back onto another lap. That is 60 laps now in the book. We're not going to break any distance records here today, that's for sure, because of the safety car start and then 2 subsequent safety car periods. So there's Keen, there is Johnny Adam. That is what 7 seconds looks like between the top 2 cars, because the gap went out by another 8 tenths. Johnny Adam's pace has slowed. He was earlier on in his stint running in the high 26s or even into the low to mid 25s, whilst Keen is staying in the low 27s now. Adam is barely in the 27s. I don't know if that was traffic induced.
Yeah, and again, just go back to a point we looked at earlier on in the race. There was a spell where Andrew Howard's car seemed to be struggling, and you were suggesting he'd been, you know, put on the ropes. But again, this is Johnny Adam we're talking about, and there is Dennis Lind, who is hustling on behind him, and 7 seconds the gap has come down to. He took 1.1 seconds out last time. Now, this might be Johnny Adam thinking, well, I can't catch the leader, I'll just bank points for second and not stress the car. Or there could be something in the system. It might even be one for Bryn to go and ask Andrew Howard about. Is the car struggling for pace? Is Johnny just having to settle for second? What's the real story here?
It is the mid-engine Lamborghini, a bit easier on its tyres as well, perhaps, because it does have a better weight distribution. So that is something that we have seen in the past, and this place will chew up those front tyres on the front engine cars, because you've got these high-speed right-handers out the back. The left front will take a bit of a pounding. Maybe that's helping as well, but you're right, that gap is really coming down now. That's the point I was starting to make, that Adam's pace has dropped, but Dennis Lind's in third really hasn't. He is a full second a lap quicker at the moment than Johnny Adam, with or without traffic getting involved, and with 21, nearly 22 minutes left to go, I think he can get there. The question is, can he then pass Johnny Adam? That's a whole different story.
Yes. I was just trying to work out what the smart answer to that would be. Johnny's not going to get involved in an accident, that's for sure, because they all know how to race at this level, so he's going to keep out of trouble. But equally, Dennis Lind's going to want to get past. It will be a good fight between those two. It's going to be worth watching if he can claw back another 6 seconds. Now, for SRO Motorsports British GT debut, this is quite an effort. The Jim Edwards Brackets Jr. and Simon Traves team looking as though it could be on for a maiden victory. It is currently Charlie Robertson behind the wheel and doing an excellent job. So Charlie Robertson on target seemingly for a class win, and Mark Sanson is with Bryn in the pits.
Start of the race, Mark, we had a little chat at the very beginning about the rolling start and things, and a new car really for us, a new team as well in GT4, and well, look at you.
Yeah, it was an eventful start. In some ways I was grateful actually it was a safety car start, because obviously you then start line astern, which is a bit less pressure than starting side by side into turn 1. So I was actually quite thankful for that in some ways, and then managed to settle down into a bit of a groove. Obviously unfortunate for the silver-silver pairings that the safety cars fell when they did. It's meant that we're somewhat lucky to be in the position we're in now, to be perfectly honest. But my stint was solid. You know, we had pretty reasonable pace. We were running really as 4 of us, kind of, you know, Docs and Drake. Some laps I'd catch Jordan, some laps Chris Sandel was catching me from behind, and it pretty much stayed that way, sort of nip and tuck throughout the whole of the session. So Yeah, I think the BOP is pretty good because it was all really close out there.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, just the way the safety cars broke, obviously it leaves Charlie leaving the pits in a very good position.
Well, it's been very good so far. I believe there's been an incident back out on track as well, but well done so far. Back to you, Andy and David.
Thanks very much, Bryn. Yeah, we've just had the spin we've been watching for Greg Caton. I think he was tagged into that by Ross Wiley. So the GCAT Porsche has survived, Andy, but pretty badly delayed.
Yeah, now Caton was behind Wiley at the start of the lap, but there you can see he was ahead, and Ross didn't really appreciate being overtaken by the AM driver, perhaps, and just got into the back of the Porsche. And of course, all the weight over the rear of the car doesn't take much to unsettle it, and on slightly worn tyres now as well. Around it went. What a shame. That had been a brilliant battle and a brilliant stint from Greg Caton. Here's how he got the move made. Oh.
So that's how the Porsche went by, with a tap in the tail. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you're going to get past me like that, I'm going to get past you. That one might rumble on for the rest of the night, mightn't it?
Yes, that's it all now makes a bit more sense now that we've got the full picture. So yes,
I think there was an element of tit and some tat in all of that, wasn't there?
Yes, the phrase red mist rather does spring to mind there. Anyway, the end result is that Ross Wiley still lost a place anyway because Lewis Proctor went past the pair of them, so he was the big winner out of all of that. And Lewis Proctor's got the Balfe Motorsport McLaren into 8th position now, and you'll be shocked to hear, David, that the incident between cars 24 and 33 is going to be investigated after the race.
No, never. Now there's Dennis Lind, still charging, but actually not now making the inroads to Johnny Adam, who is lapping okay, but it's again a traffic-affected battle. Last lap from Dennis was quicker, but he got stuck in traffic a few laps back, so had gone up a little bit. It really is just the rub of the green, where you find the back markers.
Yeah, exactly, and I think Lind's pace is better, but you can spend 10 laps gaining a second a lap, and then half of that gets undone by one badly timed back marker. So it's got to be frustrating being a GT3 driver, really. I know, GT4 traffic can't do anything else to get out of the way, but it must be frustrating. You're concentrating so hard, it's hot, it's uncomfortable in the cars. You've been in there now for nearly 3/4 of an hour.
You're selling this to me really well,
Yes, glamorous lifestyle of a racing driver, hey. So rewarding when it all goes right, but these little frustrations can then lead to, in less experienced drivers, mistakes and a bit of impatient driving towards the end of the stints.
Indeed, so the incident singular involving Wiley and Caton is going to be looked at after the race, but as we've seen, there were two elements to that, so that will rumble. As there, Dennis Lind third, fourth, Yelmer Berman behind him, fifth, Sam Neary next in the queue, and more track limit warnings are coming. Right, time has flown, only 17 minutes are on the clock. The lead gap, as you look at Johnny Adam there, is now 8.790 seconds. The fastest ice cream van in the world looks like it is going to have to settle for second place, and it's just not quite come alive. I mean, I know it's still quicker than everything else behind, but this has not really stood out. It's never had an answer to the leading Lamborghini, has it?
No, although Johnny found a second on the previous lap because he's been in the high 27s every lap consistently, and then he suddenly bangs in a 26.9, so makes a mistake there though at Westfield. That wasn't the best line through that right-hander, and that kills your speed all the way through Dingledale and Sheen Curve, so I would expect in the middle sector of this lap perhaps for Dennis Lind to have gained a bit more time. It's a 38.4 in the middle sector for Adam, and Dennis Lind comes through and does a 38.1, so yeah, a few tenths lost there because of that mistake.
An incident involving Andrew Gordon Colebrook is under investigation. So the BMW that we were discussing a little while ago has had a drama. We'll come to that in a moment or two. Let's just focus on here Yelmer Berman getting up past the SRO Motorsports Ginetta. It's going to be a great party, I think, at SRO if they come through as debut winners in GT4. Now, there is Johnny Adam. Andrew Howard is his co-driver. We're a bit concerned about the pace of this Aston Martin. Bryn, what can you elicit from Andrew?
Yeah, well, what is the problem with the car? Apparently nothing. The gap is 4.6 between Adam and behind him Dennis Lind. So, talking to his teammate here, Andrew, any problem with the car?
No, not at all. I mean, the Lambo gets its tyres in very quickly after the safety cars. We were struggling a bit. And, you know, going towards the end of a stint, I think we're probably struggling a little bit more on our tyres, that's all. But no, all good.
We saw the way that Lind took on Berman and overtook him during traffic. Are you slightly concerned that he's going to overtake as we get near the end of this one?
No.
Confident?
Well, hey, this is a nightmare track to pass for a start. And Johnny's absolutely at the top of his game. And I've been doing it long enough to know what'll be will be. And, you know, for me, I think if we can keep second, it's a fantastic result against what is a fantastic field.
Great stuff. Thank you, Andrew.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Well, there
Nice
you go.
try, Bryn.
There you go. You've heard it here first. Johnny Adams not going to be overtaken by Dennis Lynn. We can all go home now.
That's fine. That's fine. But Andrew is right. I mean, Johnny is at the top of his game. Today, the Lamborghini is a better suited car to Brands Hatch. Really, that's where the advantage would seem to be. And like Andrew says, there's no point worrying about it. He knows how to win championships, of course. He and Johnny have been there and done it and got the T-shirt.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he is a difficult man to overtake, Johnny Adam. Don't forget he did a season in the British Touring Car Championship as well, where he very quickly became known for getting his elbows out. At the earlier stages of his career, he's matured quite a bit since then into a very, very good GT driver. But you still have to do a bit of racing in GT racing. It's not all about consistent lap times over a 60-minute stint, and you know, you do have to have good racecraft, and that's something Dennis Lind definitely has, but Johnny Adam likewise. The gap 4.3 seconds now between second and third.
So Dennis Lind is chipping away. He's not hacking away, but he's chipping away, traffic allowing, and we've got 13 minutes to go. There you go, look, he's done another mega effort in the lap time stakes, because he's been able to do the best of the race, 3/10 quicker than that of Johnny Adam. That does go back to quite close to the start of the stint, admittedly, but even so, Dennis Lind underlining his speed. I'm trying to remember how many Grand Prix circuit races he will have done. He's probably rather missed out, I think, on World Challenge Europe visit, because he was in the endurance round. So Dennis is something of a rookie to Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit relative to Johnny Adams, certainly. He's still doing a fine job here, but he's got to clear the GCAT Porsche before he can think about the Aston.
Yes, that he has, and that could also affect the lap times and the gap between the two of them, because that's not going to be quite as easy an overtake as if it were a GT4 car, because of course the pace between the cars themselves relatively similar. There's Jelmer Berman, still fourth place. Sam Neary caught Jelmer about 15 or 20 minutes ago and hasn't yet been able to do anything with him. Two cars the same, of course, both Mercedes AMG GT3s, but run out of different stables, Ram Racing and Team ABBA Racing, and Team ABBA car, of course, which a few years ago, when they first joined the championship, they were running BMW Z4s, a very different beast now in the Mercedes, but it's one that seems to suit Richard Neary's driving style quite well, and his son Sam, now the youngest, one of the youngest drivers, certainly on the grid, clearly has got to grips with it as well. Flashing of the lights there for Dennis Lind then on the previous lap. Another 3/10 quicker, but he could do with more than that, couldn't he?
This is a bit of a non-story in a sense, because no further action is being taken, but an incident involving Andrew Gordon-Colebrook also involved the leader. Now, there is no further action, but something happened out of our view between the two of them, and it was very nearly a passing under the safety car, I understand, but it's been looked at by the stewards and it wasn't an issue, so that's fine. But that's the last thing a team needs with 11 minutes and change on the clock, to suddenly find your number appearing on the timing screen being either investigated or even considered to be investigated. There is Lind, still pushing in third place, so the leader has gone by, and that puts 68 laps in the book. Here is Phil Keen's Lamborghini rival Dennis Lind, and Lind is 4 seconds back from Johnny Adam. He's taken another 10th out that time.
Yeah, so he's creeping there, and of course the closer he gets to Johnny Adam, the more pressure he will then start putting Johnny under. Right now, 4 seconds is still a decent margin with only 11.25 minutes to go, so Johnny won't be panicking just yet. If Dennis suddenly managed to get within a couple of seconds or so, then Johnny might start to become a bit more preoccupied with what Dennis was doing behind him. And as we've said, that only takes one back marker at the wrong place, and all of a sudden Lind could be right there with him. Adam, by the way, 7.3 seconds behind Phil Keen at the moment. Phil, most definitely, I think, is just stroking it home now, isn't he? He's got this lead that he's had pretty much since the start of his stint. And actually, it's Dennis Lind here, isn't it, getting held up by back markers, so it can work either way, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, actually, Phil Keen's probably had one of the easiest stints he's ever had. He's not had to worry about safety cars. He's never really been threatened, so he's just had to not make mistakes only. But he's done a great job, as you would anticipate. Johnny Adam, Dennis Lind, two more GT3 stars, and their battle carries on. Look, that live gap down to 3.9 seconds, so another 10th pullback even before the end of the lap. Dennis Lind is still pushing, so the Barwell Lamborghini driver comes now down through Clark Curve. He's had traffic on that lap, but even so, he's brought down the gap. So it's a very impressive job, this, as he comes now towards the timing line, breaks the beam again, and 3.4 seconds it was, 3.7 it is. He's going to run out of time, I would predict, but it's a good effort.
Yeah, he's giving this everything, isn't he? And it's still been a good drive to fight back through track position. On board now with Johnny Adam, and this is some of that traffic we were talking about, isn't it? Two McLarens in GT4 having their own battle. The number 2 car there, the first one that he gets past, that is Jordan Collard, who is running in, what's that, 4th place in GT4, dives up the inside of the other one into Surtees. Now, minimal time lost there for Adam, maybe a second or so total. How much time, though, will Lind lose when he gets there? Because he's going to catch them somewhere out on the GP loop.
Yeah, those McLarens are on different laps, I think, but they are, as you say, evenly matched. But now it's up to Dennis Lind to clear them. So Johnny Adam in that middle sector will have lost a little bit of ground. But here, Dennis Lind has got to try and find a way by. And he's now in that twistier section. He's got to try and get past them both if he can on the way up through Dingle Dell. Yes, 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 he's done it.
Yeah, nicely done there. The McLaren had to actually take to the grass, I think, to let him through. Right, middle sector times then. Adam does a 38.7, and Lind, despite the traffic, half a second quicker in the middle sector alone. And of course, in the first sector where Adam was in traffic, he was another 0.3 quicker. So that's 0.7 quicker, and he had to pass those 2 GT4 cars in, I would say, a more awkward spot than Adam had to.
I'd go along with that, but equally, he was absolutely committed. Caught, pass straight away, bang, I'm making my move. I'm not sitting here and hesitating and thinking about it. I'm going to commit, and he did exactly that, and he's gone by. So that brings the gap second to third down to 2.8 seconds. A significant gain on that lap, therefore. 8 minutes are on the clock. It's still Berman 4th, 5th is Neary. But these Mercedes, although they have been there or thereabouts, they've never quite been the fleetest cars.
No, but then I think they would also say this isn't necessarily the circuit they expected to excel at. They qualified pretty well, but Silverstone next time out, they should be stronger. And remember that the top 3 finishers in GT3 and GT4 today will have extra pit stop time to serve next time. So, in a way, finishing just off the podium, as Yelmer Berman and Sam Neary appear that they're going to do, that might actually suit them quite well going into Silverstone next time. First sector on this lap, a 10th quicker is Lind than Johnny Adam. It's going to be a nail-biting finish, this, for Johnny, isn't it? He's familiar with those, though, because he was involved in the closest ever finish in the championship's history here 9 years ago. I can't believe it's that long ago that he had that phenomenal battle with Jan Mardenborough in the Nissan. So Johnny knows all about close finishes here at Brands Hatch.
He also knows how to win championships, and if that means banking points, then he will do that. And if it comes that on the last lap Dennis Lind is a real hurdle, I suspect Johnny might just be able to find another couple of tenths. He knows he's not got the pace now to do anything about Phil Keane, so go for points for second place. And there's a gap there. He only has to be ahead of Dennis Lind by 1,000th of a second. The gap is 2 seconds with 7 minutes to go, but even if Dennis Lind catches, it's not easy to pass. So Johnny Adam, with all his experience of the circuit, the championship, the car, you name it, he still, I suspect, is going to be okay to survive.
Yes, Johnny does know that consistency wins championships, but he also knows that points win championships. Most of the championships he's won by a very small margin. So, again, he won't want to get to the end of the season and look back at this race and the second place that he didn't fight hard enough for and see that cost him the championship. So, it is going to be a rather tasty battle. I'm now more and more convinced that Lind is going to get there as well, because he is suddenly taking big chunks of time out of Johnny Adam again. The lap times are back into the 26s for both of them, as the fuel load, of course, diminishes, and these Pirelli tyres do keep their pace pretty deep into the stint. So a light car, a driver in Dennis Lind who clearly is clicking with car and circuit right now, and on this lap again he was 2 tenths quicker in the first sector, he was about 4 tenths quicker in the middle sector, and that is the GT4 leader, Charlie Robertson, in the pit lane with a left rear puncture.
Absolutely right. So how much time is this going to lose them? How much did they have in hand? Well, they've lost the lead already. Gus Burton has gone through. So on the limp-in lap, the Ginetta has lost its class lead with 5 3/4 minutes on the clock. Can you believe it? Drama in GT4 in the last knockings of the race. Then it's still in the pit lane. This becomes the class leader, and there the Ginetta still has to get the new tyre on. It is done. Now the car's got to be dropped down. Come on, chaps. Suddenly it all becomes a panic. Is everything right? Is it tightened up? Have you done the nuts? They've done one half of the operation, of course, the mandatory pit stop, but this is all something new, and it's in a panic in the heat of the race. So go, go, go. Charlie Robertson blasts away, but that is a win snatched away with just over 5 minutes to go, because they're going to have lost the best part of 3/4 of a lap to the leading BMW.
Oh, I tell you what, that is true heartbreak. The highs and lows of motorsport, hey, and there is the shredded tyre. Many things that could have caused that, but most of them not really the fault of the driver.
Well, possibly, unless he's been trimming curbs too much. But yes, I mean, that for me is the real interest. Why has that happened? Has he run over something? Has it been curb strike? Was there a brush with another car? And therefore, if one car can get a puncture, could we have another one doing it? Or is that just pure bad luck?
I would suggest that possibly it was, as you say, because of curb strikes or contact, because it's not that hot here today. They've had, you know, the pace has been strong, yes, but they haven't been pushing hard. They've not been in a battle through this second stint of the race. Charlie Robertson's been out on his own, running to a set pace for his stint. So I would assume that maybe he's run over a curb or, as you say, made contact with maybe a GT3 car coming through. Either way, absolute heartbreak for them. It does, however, promote the Century Motorsport BMWs that couldn't find their way to the podium if they tried at a tight and technical circuit like Brands Hatch last year, in a 1-2 position in GT4, which, yeah, I think they'll take that, won't they?
Yeah, just thinking, left rear, so it's a running wide type puncture rather than a corner cutting puncture, if indeed it is a curb strike. So Pirelli will have a look at that, but yeah, it's an odd one, that. As you see Jake Giddings there going a lap down to Johnny Adam, who's only 1.2 seconds up on Dennis Lynn. But look at the clock, 3.5 minutes to go, and a flying lap is just under 90 seconds. So barring disaster, Phil Keane still looking strong up front. Johnny Adam, can he hang on? I still think he can. I know the gap's coming down, but he's got just about enough in hand to get to the end, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, yes, but Dennis Lynn, having spent the majority of his stint chasing down this Aston Martin, is not going to let the chance to attack it on the last lap go begging. And through the corners, you can see just from the body language of the Lamborghini, and we made the reference earlier on to how it does look a little edgier than the Aston Martin, but you can really see he is wringing that car's neck, and this is not good news for Johnny Adam. That's the GT4 leader, Gus Burton, who he has caught at the final corner. That hurts him through the turn, it hurts his exit speed, and Dennis Lynn is almost there now. Across the start-finish line they go. This gap is going to be down around a second. No, it's 0.6 seconds down between the two of them, with 2 laps left.
I reckon so. There is time for one more at the end of this, so the gap 6/10, as you say, up towards Druids. Now Johnny Adam is going to have to start working hard, but he knows exactly where to defend. The Aston's going to have its strengths at certain parts of the circuit, and we come back potentially to a situation we have seen in so many GT races. The balance of performance means that these two cars, when they get together, should be so similar in terms of pace, and that might just help Johnny Adam as well. So Dennis Lind has chipped away lap after lap, a 10th here, a couple of 10ths there. He's up the curb and he presses on, so Dennis Lind exploring just about as much of Kent as he possibly can, curb and all, but Surtees on that lap through. Comes now down through Hawthorne. Johnny Adam is ahead of him, and the race leader, who is 9 seconds up the road, should be ready to start the last lap of the race when he comes over the timing line. There is Adam second, and third Dennis Lind. Mighty effort this by Dennis. Fastest lap of the race, and he's running third on the road.
He could not use any more of the road either, could he? He's on the white lines going into the corners, coming out of the corners. He's all over the curb. He makes a bit of a mistake there, though, at Stirling's. Just carried a bit too much speed in. That's that aero wash, isn't it? That's quite a quick corner, actually, at Stirling's, because there's banking, which allows you to carry a lot of speed through it. And in a high-speed corner like that, the closer you get to the other car, the less grip you have running in its wake. And so actually this time, Johnny Adam gets the gap back out again. Through they go now, 1 minute and 20 seconds left on the clock. That means there was about 1 minute and 30 on the clock when Phil Keane got to the line. This should be the last lap.
No, I think two more.
Yes, sorry, yes,
because the flying lap is the
yes.
last lap was a 1:26. I think Phil Keane might have just given Johnny Adam a little bit more sweat here, because I think they're going to squeeze one more lap out of it at the end of this. So don't forget, you're looking at 1 minute on the clock for these two and their track position, but 9 seconds up the road is Phil Keane. So I still think, yeah, he might be able to squeeze one more out of this, unless he really backs off to preserve everything. So there is second Johnny Adam, third behind him you can see 63, and what was 9/10. The gap had gone up at the start of the lap. Looks like it's come down slightly again on this lap, because in sector 1, yes, 2/10 pulled back by Dennis Lind, but Johnny Adam is still there, as here is the race leader. He is going to get one more lap, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He'd have to back off an awful lot now to make this the final lap. He's got the gap to do it, but I don't think he will. Phil Keane has got no traffic ahead of him, and he just needs to bring it home on this final lap. The real question is who will be in second place. Dennis Lind is quicker in the middle sector than Johnny Adam by a couple of tenths of a second. Phil Keane out of Clearways and Clark Curve. The checkered flag is not ready, and with 5 seconds left on the clock, he does now start the final lap.
He could just about have backed off and done it, couldn't he? But this is for second place with one more lap to go. So the good news, Johnny, is you're second. The bad news is you've got another lap to try and hang on in there. Dennis Lind goes through 0.595 of a second back then with a lap to run. Through Paddock Hill Bend they go. Jelmer Berman is still fourth. In the background you might catch a flash of pink as the Mercedes is there. Fifth is Sam Neary's green Mercedes, and sixth Scott Mulvern in the TPR Porsche, the Team Parker Racing entry. So that car has chipped its way up the order. But there Johnny Adam then about to end the Indy Circuit element and go into the woods. Still second, but only just. Yes,
there's only a car length or so between them, but now we're heading on to the part of the circuit that should suit the Aston Martin a bit more. It always seems to gap the Lamborghini down Pilgrim's Drop and into Hawthorne. The Aston Martin a bit quicker in the speed traps, the Lamborghini better through the tight and technical section. And really now Dennis Lind, even if he was right on the rear bumper of the Aston Martin, he's running out of places to pass.
He is. Unless it's going to be a real start at Clearways, get to the line, kind of do-or-die effort up to the checkered flag. But you can see as the car hops its way through Westfield, it's not really close enough now, the Lamborghini, to think about the move. And Johnny Adam ticks off another corner. Only 2 to go as he comes into Stirling's. But it is going to be a second British GT win for Michael Igoe. It's going to be an 18th for Phil Keane. He's going to be 2 clear of Johnny Adam now, because honours in the opening round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship go to Phil Keane and Michael Igoe in the WPI Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan. Great effort by the team, by Michael, by Phil. Second, Johnny Adam and Andrew Howe just ahead by 3/10 of a second from Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lind. Fourth goes the way of Jelmer Berman and Ian Loggy. Fifth, father and son Richard and Sam Neary. And for sixth place, it should be Scott Mulvern and Nick Jones. Now, what about GT4?
Yes, well, this is going to be very good news for Century Motorsport, isn't it? Because Gus Burton is going to bring the 57 car home, a race winner in GT4. He and Will Burns win the opening round of the British GT4 Championship. There is the first part of the Century Motorsport celebration, and a little while longer, about 10 seconds later or so, there'll be another part, because Chris Salkeld, on his debut in the championship, is going to finish second with his teammate Andrew Gordon-Colebrook. Provisionally finish second, because they have that incident that's going to be investigated after the race for the contact Salkeld had with the Toyota of John Ferguson.
Well, a great way to start the championship season, wasn't it? Phil Keane and Michael Igoe get 77 laps in the book. 2 hours ago we were talking about what the weather might do. Well, actually, it didn't have a huge amount to play once we got the race underway, but it has certainly been an enthralling opening round of the championship, and of course the only round where we don't have to worry about the extra time spent in the pits for finishing in the top 3 in the previous race. So almost natural pit stops as a consequence. Johnny Adam and Andrew Howe second, Dennis Lind, Leo Machitsky third. Great drive by Dennis Lind.
Did we ever get to the bottom of the slow pit stop for 63?
No.
We did?
No.
Because that arguably cost them a win, given the pace that Lind had in that second stint. I mean, he was only 10 seconds off the lead in the end, and I'd say he lost at least that through the slow pit stop and then the lap spent behind Jelmer Berman.
Certainly cost them second place, didn't it? Because 3/10 was the margin there. So let's have a look at the results. Michael Igoe and Phil Keane, the winners, ahead of Johnny Adam and Andrew Howe. Second, Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lind in third. Fourth, Ian Loggy and Jelmer Berman, ahead of Richard and Sam Neary, who are the Silver and AM winners in fifth. From GT3, Scott Mulvern and Nick Jones taking sixth overall. The GT3 AM Porsche of Greg Caton and Seamus Jennings coming home in 10th place. And have a look down to GT4, where honours go the way of Will Burns and Gus Burton. 13th overall behind the delayed Sandy Mitchell and Adam Ballon Lamborghini, and ahead of the sister BMW of Chris Salkeld and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook. Further down the order, you'll find in Pro-Am, third, Jamie Stanley, former GT4 champion, along with Nick Halstead taking third spot, and Charlie Robertson in the end coming home for fourth with Mark Sanson in GT4. Poor reward after having been looking so strong earlier on in that second stint. So Michael Igoe puts his hat on. Phil Keane will take off the helmet in a moment. So another new co-driver for Michael, who started with Adam Wilcox. Dennis Lind has driven with him. Andrea Caldarelli drove with him at Donington last year, and they had that win. There they are. Phil Keane is the man that brought the car home. Well done, Phil Keane. Career win 18. He's with Bryn Lucas.
Yes, I am with Phil. Phil, a brilliant, brilliant win for you. This is win number 18 in GT3, but more importantly, it puts you at the top when we go into this 2021 championship.
Yeah, I mean, great drive by Michael, and couldn't be proud of the team and the guys. You know, they've done a fantastic job. We've worked really hard all winter, and it's just nice to see it pay off.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant stuff. Your teammate yourself, I mean, what a great job as well.
Yeah, I just followed the instructions from Phil, and as he just said, all the hard work that we've done over the winters starting to pay off. So yeah, let's look forward to the next round.
You were confident when I spoke to you earlier.
Sorry?
You were confident about him earlier on.
Yeah, no, definitely. We all know Phil, everyone on the grid does, and he does what he does.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Yes, so Phil Keane then and Michael Igo, championship contenders for sure. Michael will be hoping that the Keane curse doesn't come over from Barwell to WPR Motorsport with him. No doubting, though, their ability to win races. Of course, it does mean, though, that they'll now have a success penalty when we go to round 2.
Yes, and of course a longer race in order to try and overcome it, because we go to the 3-hour race there. Now, what about Johnny Adam and Andrew Howard? Second overall. Bryn, they're all yours.
Andrew, I spoke to you when Johnny was out there and you had no problems at all. You said it's easy, he's going to bring it home second, and he did such a thing.
You know, at the end of the day, Johnny's got fantastic experience, car's done well, and it's a tough circuit to overtake, but absolute faith in Johnny, no issues at all, absolute faith.
Well, Johnny, for yourself, you were pushed right at the end, weren't you?
Yeah, the Lamborghini looked very consistent over the course of the stint, and we were fast at the start. I think I drew slightly up to Phil at the start of the stint, but they struggled a little bit with Deg throughout the stint there. But yeah, good to hold on to second. Great points for the championship and a nice way to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done, both.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes, Johnny Adam and Andrew Howard, a successful reunion, I think, for those two. Good to have them back in the championship for a full season campaign. It's like they've never been away.
That's right. And expect wins.
Yeah.
Might not be a Brands Hatch Aston Martin circuit, but it's points, and that will be very impressive indeed. They're the GT4 drivers getting themselves together. Will Burns and Gus Burson, GT4 winners. We'll try and get to them in due course, but Dennis Lynn might have a story to tell. Dennis, we are delighted to have in British GT, and for third in GT3, he and Leo Machitsky will be somewhere in Parc Ferme. There you can see the 1-2 for Century Motorsport. Great way to start the season. Now, Dennis Lind and Leo Machitsky, third in GT3, and Bryn is with them.
Well, your teammate's way off over there, but Dennis, that was a heck of a battle. You almost got to second.
Yeah, almost is key word. We had some issues in the pit lane. We have to figure out what that was, but we really had a winning car today, I think, pace-wise. I was feeling good in the car, very confident. Engineers has done a mega job getting the car, and Barwell is just working together very well. And yeah, it's a pity we get P3 when we should have had P1, but next time.
Well, it's great to watch. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done, Dennis Lind. And the GT4 situation, as we've been saying, is this 1-2 for Century Motorsport, and really impressive effort for that team after, as Andy made the point in the race, just the most awful luck for the bulk of last year.
Awful look, and just didn't really have the pace, did they? You did get the feeling that the M4 was due a bit of an upgrade, and now they've got it, and Century have committed fully now with this 2-car entrance. Let's head down then, shall we, to have a chat with Bryn Lucas. He's found our GT4 winner, Will Burns.
Well, I don't want to say inherited the win, but you certainly got that win. You had to work hard for it, but it's nice to get a win on the first race, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I just can't believe it, especially this is back into the British GT, and to come away with the overall GT4 win is just a fantastic result. Obviously, commiserations to the Ginetta getting the puncher, but at the same time, the safety cars sort of hampered us at the start, so it was just a little bit frustrating on them, but obviously to come away with this is just an amazing job.
Yeah, it's amazing. The podiums are happening now, so well done, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, cheers.
Yes, well, fantastic performance there for Century Motorsport. Will Burns raced in a number of different categories at a pretty high level in Britain now. Very happy boy indeed. Dennis Lind, I think, and Leo Machitsky can be happy with their third place overall as well. A really solid start to Leo's return, and Dennis's sort of first real championship challenge, you feel, this year?
And I can't think of another Danish-Russian combination we've had on a British GT podium either in all the history of the championship.
Yes, absolutely. A truly international affair again, British GT, as it should be. You know, it's attracting some of the best GT racers in the world, and we do have a habit of doing this in the UK, don't we? Our top-level motorsport series, they are world-renowned, and yeah, great to have drivers of their calibre racing with us again this weekend as Lauren Granville ushers the next batch of drivers to the podium.
Come on, they'll be closed, he says. So there you've got the third place. So and Alan Hyde, who's the track commentator in the background, is having to do this just by hollering at them to encourage them along. So on his instruction, Leo Machitsky and Dennis Lynn step forward for third place, have a trophy, have a bottle, go to the backdrop, and then we'll make way for the second place combination. So stand there on your mark for third place, Dennis Lynn and Leo Machitsky. Really great drive that.
Yes, it really was, and so nearly second place, but that in the end goes to the Beach Deed AMR duo of Johnny Adam and Andrew Howard. It's nice that we're able to get all three of our teams on the podium together now. That's a 2021 development that we weren't able to do last year. Another sign that we're heading in the right direction, I suppose. So both of those teams joined by WPI Motorsport then are race winners here in the season opener at Brands Hatch of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship for 2021. Michael Igoe and Phil Keane. Is this year the year for Phil Keane and Michael Igoe, of course, to get both of them their first ever British GT Championships? They are your overall and indeed Pro-Am podium finishers.
Welcome to British GT, Dennis Lynn. You need to be quicker getting the cork out of the bottle. A soggy Dane.
Yes, but you see, you can go too early with this, I've found, and sometimes it's the driver that saves it till last, whilst the others are defenceless.
Have the last laugh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Dennis has been on the podium a few times in his career. I'm sure he's been through this kind of thing before. The celebrations, I think, will last for a while here. It's always so important, isn't it, to start your season off strongly as well. And that first win at the start of the year is all the sweeter because it just sets you up so nicely for the rest of the season.
Yes, and if you can overcome a technical track like this, then it does, as you say, perhaps make life a little easier for future circuits. Right, Ross Wiley steps forward from the Simon Green Motorsport team for third in class. Not sure where Lucky KHERAO has gone to.
Yes, Ross up there on his own, isn't he? And that, again, is a bit of a provisional result because they did have that incident with the GCAT Racing Porsche.
Or two.
Yes. Balf Motorsports with the Proctors, father and son duo, and then another one that won in the category. This is the Nearys, Richard and Sam Neary, keeping it in the family here in British GT. And the Nearys, I think, are going to be a team to watch this year. If they can just stay out of trouble, then certainly the Silver Am category is doable for them. Maybe they could go and snatch that first victory. That's certainly, speaking to Richard and Sam this morning, that's exactly what they're targeting. They're almost more interested in finally getting that win than they are their points tally at the end of the year.
Number 2, James Gill, Jordan Collard.
Very lucky KHERAO. He's probably fled to Mallory Park to race something else because he normally has at least 2 races over a weekend at different circuits. So GT4 podium's underway. James Kell and Jordan Collard are there. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook and his co-driver step forward, and then Will Burns and Gus Burton for the notional top step of the podium. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook and Chris SALKELD, but again, that's a car with a Damocletian investigation.
Yes, but a car, at least in its original guise, that won at Silverstone last year. So, you know, they're heading there with success penalties, but they are heading to a circuit at which they dominated last year. So obviously different driver combos now, the Evo BMW. But if they can do that well at Brands Hatch, what can they do when we go to a Silverstone or a Donington Park or even a Snetterton, where in the past the BMWs have gone well?
True, although Silverstone last year was safety car, weather affected, wasn't it? As much as anything, we had that early safety car period and people rolling the dice with pit stop strategy. But yes, I take your point. I mean, the car did work well around there last year. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook and Chris SALKELD taking their class win in GT4.
Well-deserved one as well, although they will have that incident with the Toyota to discuss afterwards. Pro-Am then top 3, and that's going to be a competitive category. We have to feel for the Mark Sansom and Charlie Robertson duo because, I mean, They really should have won. If that tyre had lasted another 5 minutes, they would have dominated in GT4 overall and within Pro-Am as well. The Ginetta, I think, is going to be a factor throughout the rest of the season as well. Well, thank you everyone for your company. I hope you've all enjoyed the opening round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It was an absolute thriller, which saw Michael Igoe and Phil Keane come out on top in GT3, with Century Motorsport making a 1-2 in GT4. We will be back again next time at Silverstone for the longest race of the season. Thank you everyone for joining us here at Brands Hatch. We'll see you again next time.